Chapter 286. Aftermath. The devil forces were trying to escape from the cracks in space. All the legendary experts were rushing to slaughter them, especially Wu Patian and his subordinates. He had just experienced the pain of the loss of his mentor, and was not able to resist the grief. He wanted to vent out all his anger, so he rushed to kill the devil forces. Wu Patian looked like a deity who had descended into this world with a terrifying aura. The devil forces did not have anyone who could stop him except the specter, but he was already dead. Wu Patian was beaming with anger because the devil forces had dared to attack his home, and the loss he had to suffer was grave. Yi Shiwen crashed into the space crash along with Qianyu Peak. He was leading the way while others were following him. Qianyu Peak was a specially designed floating war fortress that was only given to the pro-disciples, and was much superior to ordinary floating peaks. Not even the attacks of a legendary realm expert could bring it down. Not to mention it was not possible to bring down Qianyu Peak so easily, because Yi Ziwen was there to guard it. The combined power of Yi Shiwen and Qianyu Peak was enormous and disastrous for anyone or anything that stood in their way. The importance of Qianyu Peak could be determined from the fact that in over 1,000 years of history, Yiyuan School was able to accumulate not more than 10 floating war fortresses. And only the pro-disciples were eligible to have their own floating war fortresses. Anyway, there were never too many pro-disciples to surpass the number of available fortresses. One must know that building such a fortress was much more difficult compared to training disciples of similar strength, since the cost of the resources required was almost 10 times more. These war fortresses were very significant during such attacks, and were made to defend the sect only during such critical times. During the attack, the Taizhong elders were busy activating these war fortresses, and right now, they were relying on the extreme destructive power of the war fortresses to wipe out the devil forces. Yi Shiwen issued an order, and the Qianyu Peak rushed forward to exterminate the remaining devil soldiers. Yi Shiwen chased the devils into the space crack, and saw that at the other end of the crack, there was a valley. It was spread in several thousand square kilometers. Although Yi Shiwen was not sure where this place was located in his world, he was certain that they had found the devil's lair. Many devil soldiers were boiling with excitement after seeing the invaders in their lair. Several devil experts ascended to attack them along with many war monsters. The Qianyu Peak was surrounded by a Lingqi barrier which was protecting it, even though the firepower was consuming way too much energy from the spiritual arteries. The devil base was also surviving on similar veins, which were present underneath the valley, and it made the devil war machines much powerful and easy to use, but they still could not rival the resources of Yiyuan School. Bang! The devil forces attacked the Qianyu Peak, and it vibrated due to the impact caused by a barrage of attacks. Yi Shiwen issued an order forward, and the Qianyu Peak crashed into the valley. Various attack-based laws and Jun circles were activated. All sorts of martial attacks were launched. Everything that came in its way was destroyed while the other floating peaks also arrived in abundance, and started following the lead of Qianyu Peak. Wu Patian and several other elders, followed by the war fortresses, rushed forward to attack the devil camps. Numerous devil soldiers could not resist the attack and were killed instantly. Who is there? There was a mighty roar from the depths of the valley, and a terrifying claw appeared from the sky. It grabbed one of the floating peaks and crushed it. The floating peak exploded and many disciples were killed at once. Humph! Wu Patian growled and swayed his sword. It was clear that his sword technique was somewhat similar to the old head. Even though it was not that swift and potent, however, his sword ki attack seemed powerful enough to split the world. Wu Patian swayed his sword, and in a flash, dissected the devil claw in the sky. The sword ki was so massive that it created a deep ditch in the valley, killing unknown numbers of devil soldiers in one fell swoop. Ah! A sharp scream resounded in the sky and a figure fell from the void. Shwa! Wu Patian made a final sword strike and created a void with his might. A massive blood fog surrounded the falling figure. He was merciless with the sword because in his heart he was angry, and this was the only way to vent it. The disciples were excited after witnessing this and went all out. They rushed to exterminate the Bai Majiao followers. The Bai Majiao followers were shocked, and did not have the strength to retaliate. All of them were massacred by the angry disciples of Yiyuan School, under the leadership of Wu Patian. After almost half a day, the one-sided massacre finally ended. The Baimajiao followers had nowhere to hide. Their Sage Realm Devil expert, who was supposed to guide them, was also dead. In the end, Yiyuan School completely eradicated the Devil's Lair. Yiyuan School's expedition shocked the entire Great Yu state. Although it had to suffer heavy losses, everyone got to know that both sides lost their Sage Realm experts and made them feel somewhat relieved. After all, the very existence of a Sage Realm expert had a strategic suppression effect on the entire Great Yu state. However, this was certainly not good news for Yiyuan School. By this expedition conducted by Yiyuan School, the Baimajiao organization suffered a head-on blow, and was exterminated to such an extent that it would never be able to recover from this. The losses suffered by Yiyuan School were less compared to the Devil Forces. 1/3 of the disciples of Yiyuan School were killed and hundreds were injured. Although there were several hundred true disciples in the sect, almost 100 were killed and were severely injured in the battle. Over 1/3 of the elders also lost their lives while protecting the disciples in the battle. Although it did seem like the elders appeared during the end of the fight, it was not true. They were, in fact, fighting the devil forces that had infiltrated the inner parts of the sect. This time, Yiyuan School suffered heavy losses by losing 1/3 of their nurtured and cultured disciples. However, it couldn't be considered as a miserable loss because this was the last time anyone would dare to attack Yiyuan School. After all, if they could survive an attack of such huge scale, then could literally survive anything. Yiyuan School was attacked brutally, but it survived and was not destroyed. Yiyuan School had been standing tall for thousands of years, and with their hidden techniques and secret strength, who could dare to drown them? This victory of Yiyuan School would be recorded in the history of Great Yu State. No one thought that Yiyuan School would fall down so easily, but no one thought that they would come out of it so victoriously either. Yiyuan School organized a huge memorial service for the fallen, and invited many influential figures. A memorial service was conducted specially for the old head. The old head lived for 1,000 years before dying in the most respectable and honorable manner. All the disciples and the influential figures that had come to pay homage were younger, and did not know him personally, but they held high regard for the old head. The old head had fought bravely and saved Yiyuan School from a Sage Realm Devil, ultimately ending his life in a sitting posture. If the old head had not stopped the specter, then he would have wiped off Yiyuan School and conquered the entire Great Yu State. On top of a mountain peak that was located in Yiyuan School's territory, two figures were standing tall and comfortably in the spring breeze. Yi Shiwen was looking over the school from the mountain peak. The reconstruction work of Yiyuan School was in full swing. "Are you planning to go to TMU?" Yi Shiwen asked the young guy who was standing next to him. He was the strongest disciple in the younger generation of Yunqing sect, named Jian Wuchen. He had come to pay homage to the old head as a representative from Yunqing. Yi Shiwen looked at him in a somewhat strange manner. One must know that Jian Wuchen was also in complete truth realm like Yi Shiwen. He was also not far from breaking into the half-step legendary realm. Going to TMU and having such a cultivation level was not really an issue. Although it was indeed said that true disciples could at most become janitor disciples after joining TMU, exceptionally talented and young disciples like Jian Wuchen were bound to become outer disciples at the least. Jian Wuchen earlier belonged to a sword slave clan, but his status had now risen. Yi Shiwen knew about the existence of the so-called sword slaves of Yunqing sect, and how the young and talented disciples were forcefully made to acquire the status of sword slave, and were trained intensely to serve the imperial clan. However, making good use of such an opportunity, even as a sword slave and after being trained in the most low-level martial arts, Jian Wuchen still rushed all the way to the top of Yunqing's younger generation, and became a legend over there. It could be said that the 8th prince and several other people were in awe after seeing Jian Wuchen's potential. After all, he was the only noteworthy sword genius in the younger generation of Yunqing. Others were just unable to challenge his status. His future prospects were also boundless. Yi Shiwen believed that Jian Wuchen would manage to do well in TMU as well. Of course, there used to a connection between him and the 8th prince that had forced him to become Yi Zaiwen's enemy back then, but Yi Shiwen did not hold it against him. Mu Ling had also evaluated him before, saying that Jian Wuchen's sword skills were purer compared to his own. Mu Ling was quite impressed, and that was the reason why he had spared Jian Wuchen's life on the Demon Island. Such a person should definitely be a part of the first batch of TMU. Jian Wuchen replied with an indifferent expression on his face. Those youngsters died because of me. I led them to their deaths. Yi Shiwen immediately understood what Jian Wuchen was referring to. The casualties that occurred on the Demon Island had deeply affected him, and he felt responsible for the deaths of his juniors. But now all that is over, it does not matter anymore. It has opened up a path for me, and my way is now the way of the sword. Yi Shiwen kind of understood that Jian Wuchen was also probably going to participate in the assessment. That's right, I am going to participate in TMU's assessment, let's go together. Chapter 287 sets out on a journey. Yi Shiwen was looking at the construction work going on in Yiyuan School, then shortly decided to embark on a journey to TMU. In about a year, the TMU's assessment was about to take place in True Martial City. TMU was located in True Martial City, which was the first human city to be recorded in the history of Wuxia. It was one of the grand divine cities of Wuxia, and didn't belong to any influence. It was governed solely by TMU. Within 10 days, they reached Shunan Prefecture, which was located on the bordering region between the Ming Empire and the Southeast region. The Ming Empire shared its border with the Southeast region, which was the longest border that crossed all 10 countries of the Southeast region. The Great Yu State was one of them. Ming Empire was spread massively, covering a vast expanse of land. It was larger than the combined 10 countries of the Southeast region, and this was just one of the several empires located in the southern region. Two figures entered the city slowly. Although they were not dressed in traditional clothing of Ming Empire, no one bothered to care because Shunan Prefecture was located in the border area of Ming Empire, and was always visited by outsiders. One of the two men was dressed in black and carrying a blade. The other one was carrying a long sword, and there was an icy cold look in his eyes. These two figures belonged to Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen. Yi Shiwen was being followed by a dashing demon beast that had a shining black body. It was none other than the wolf cub, who seemed to have grown up to 1 meter height in the last few months, reaching up till Yi Ziwen's waist. Gee, there are so many people here. Out of all the races living in the 10,000 worlds, the human race has the highest breeding capacity. They breed like rabbits. The wolf cub could not help but express his admiration. Before he could finish, Yi Shiwen slapped him lightly and said, "Stop acting like a country bumpkin. You will make us lose our faces in a foreign land." The population was so much more in Wuxia compared to his past life on the earth. In fact, China was only half the size of the Great Yu State, and Eurasia was only half the size of Ming Empire. Not to mention, it was still not the largest empire in this world. The people on the streets were shocked when they saw the wolf cub, not because they had never seen a demon beast walking peacefully in the city, but because they saw a small wolf having a conversation like human beings. It was a well-known fact that it was extremely difficult for the demon beasts to acquire wisdom, let alone acquiring enough wisdom to talk like humans. Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen were looking for a hotel to rest for some time. They still had plenty of time and were not worried. Not far from them, there were several people talking among themselves. TMU opens its doors once in 100 years to recruit experts, and that time has finally arrived. Yes, hey, since our Shunan Prefecture is situated at the border of the Southeast region, every time a large number of experts from the Southeast region pass through here to participate in TMU recruitment. They are the weak ones, the ones who got left out. There are the ones who get directly recruited by the representatives, and the leftovers go to TMU for assessment. They are nothing compared to our experts in the Ming Empire. Only one of our experts is enough to wreak havoc in the Southeast region. Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen were not pleased when they heard this, because they both belonged to the Southeast region. Although the Southeast region was divided into 10 countries, the insult was directed at both of them. Southeast region is a small influence and sends worthless participants in the assessment, especially the experts of their younger generation are mediocre and get wrecked by our experts every time. Yes, the contest between the young experts is very intense, but it is also worth seeing. If it was me and had the opportunity to be at TMU, I would have never missed it. The experts who go to TMU get to assess their own strength, and also get a chance to kick some serious asses. TMU is the topmost university in the southern region. The recruitment process is very grueling, and they depend purely on talent and strength. There is no age limit to participate, even if a participant is 100-year-old or 200-year-old. The accumulation of these older experts is profound compared to a 50-year-old participant. Although the accumulation of some comparatively younger experts, let's say under the age of 50 years, who have already stepped into half-step legendary or legendary realm is not profound, they are still better than a 100-year-old expert of the same level. But even this much is not enough to win a seat in TMU. Those experts who are ambitious and want to reach the peak of martial arts, they not only have to beat their peers, but also have to trample the older experts. But the experts who are more than 100 years old are generally in the third or fourth stage of half-step legendary realm. They are very powerful and experienced, and hence there would be few 50 years old or lesser experts who would be at the same level. And even then, they would need to have multiple breakthroughs first in order to defeat the older experts. Under normal circumstances, having multiple breakthroughs in such less time is impossible. Not to mention, there already are countless powerhouses in TMU, increasing the competition many folds afterward. When Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen heard this, their expressions suddenly changed. Yi Shiwen had not expected the assessment to be so tough. Originally he knew that the road would be difficult to tread, but he had underestimated it. He thought that the representatives would have already picked the worthy ones, like Qi Fifan, and the remaining experts coming to the assessment would not be that skillful, but he was wrong. Yi Shiwen was not much interested in TMU. All he cared about increasing his strength and stepping into the legendary realm by passing various trials. At such a young age, if Yi Shiwen was able to step into the legendary realm, then no matter where he was, this would certify him as a genius and living legend. However, he never considered fighting against much older experts who might be on the fourth or fifth stage of half-step legendary realm. But now he did not have time to think about those who were far above him. This trip to TMU was not going to be easy as he had expected, but he would certainly get to fight with talented young experts around his own age. He might get to experience startling heavenly collisions in the near future. But there was a possibility that things could take a cruel turn. These ambitious young masters would do anything to beat all the peers and establish their prestige in the foreign land. Yi Shiwen was a little alarmed but mostly calm after he put together all the facts. However, Jian Wuchen was very much excited. He wanted to defeat more and more powerful opponents, so that he could prove himself as a true sword master. Hey, this time our Shunan Prefecture's ominous wolf duo are also embarking on a journey to TMU. I must warn our fellow brothers from the southeast region that they shouldn't provoke the bloodthirsty ominous wolf duo, otherwise they will witness massacre. Ha 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 ha. Anyway, only a few people have come from the southeast region, and should consider themselves as terminated already. Ominous wolf? Look, they are from your clan. Yi Shiwen said to the wolf cub jokingly. Humph. They are definitely from some bullshit clan. The wolf cub replied. They are really arrogant. Jian Wuchen said while his face revealed a slight trace of anger. Being a sword master, there were very few things that affected his composure, and being looked down upon was one of them. Just ignore them. We don't have to lower ourselves to their level. Yi Shiwen replied calmly. Although these people were not weak, almost all of them were at the fifth or sixth stage of truth realm, but they were nothing in front of Yi Shiwen. He could crush them all in one fell swoop. Indeed, indeed. The wolf cub yawned and said, they are nothing more than dried bones in burial mound. Anyways, why hasn't the food been served yet? The wolf cub instantly went back to showing his real freeloading colors. You all are way too arrogant. Don't you dare cross the line, okay? A person from the back stood up and spoke. Looking at his appearance, it was easy to make out that he was from the southeast region. Your Ming Empire is indeed very powerful. But do you really think that the 10 countries of the southeast region are run by weak lambs? Don't you forget that this is just a prefecture, not a land of geniuses? Your plan of defeating us is nothing more than wishful thinking, understood? Chapter 288. Long time no see, Lu Yueru. Well, thank you very much. No, really, this is actually the first time I heard about your southeast region and its so-called glory. At this time, a young guy stepped out from the group of several young men. He stuck out his palm and instantly shoved it against the chest of the other guy from Southeast region. The guy from Southeast region did not even get a chance to react. He just did not stand a chance in front of his opponent, who was at Truth 8 stage. Bang! The young guy was sent flying across the inn. This palm move was meant to be an instant killer attack and directly punctured his core arteries, killing him right on the spot. Humph, he was a short-sighted person and so full of himself, but look happened to him in the end. I guess he thought he was still in his so-called Southeast region? The young man said disdainfully. Qiu Xinji, you have really grown stronger. Gee, why don't you teach these Southeastern experts a lesson today? We don't want them wandering around in our territory, while bragging about themselves. A young expert said in an instigating manner. You are going too far. A loud shout sounded from the corner of the room. Yi Shiwen turned back, and saw a group of 6 Southeastern experts. He actually recognized the 2 seemingly leaders of this group, namely Lu Yueru and Xiaozhen. It seemed like Lu Yueru had chosen to walk down this thorny path. In fact, there was no one who wouldn't want to walk down this thorny road of blood and battle to gain reputation by defeating powerful peers and competing with continent's topmost geniuses. Only the most competent ones got a chance to enter TMU. Xiaozhen stood up as he was unable to bear the provocation intended by the young experts of Shunan Prefecture. Xiaotru, don't be impulsive. Lu Yueru frowned and said, I cannot stand these arrogant people. How dare they look down on the 10 countries of the Southeast region? Xiaozhen said furiously as he was genuinely provoked, and wasn't able to bear such an insult. If I don't kill that guy, the hate in my heart will not disappear. Xiaozhen said. Qiu Xinji sneered while staring at Xiaozhen, then said, You want to kill me? Utter nonsense. Since you look down upon us, fight me and I will prove you wrong. Xiaozhen said in a cold voice and waved his sword. After the Demon Island incident, Xiaozhen's strength had no small improvement. He was at the 8th stage of Truth Realm, right now, which was great considering his young age. I'll kill you. Qiu Xinji took just a step and his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot where he was standing, leaving only an afterimage behind. And the very next instant, a dazzling blade light appeared out of nowhere and rushed towards Xiaozhen. Humph! Xiaozhen attacked decisively and shot rays of sword light towards the incoming blade light attack. The collision that occurred was destructive and had a severe impact on the inn. The 2 could not completely go out inside the inn, so they flew outside. They went high in the sky and collided severely. At the same time, Lu Yueru and her group and several other experts followed after them. Even Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen went outside to watch the battle. The collisions between Bladiki and Swordki were causing explosions and terrifying flashes of light, which soon attracted the attention of many people. The long blade in Qiu Xinji's hands released a monstrous and fierce wolf that jumped forward at a lightning speed. Xiaozhen hastily protected himself with a barrier of sword light. His whole body was covered in cold sweat, because he felt exhausted in merely blocking one attack. Qiu Xinji was not even a top expert of Ming Empire, but it had still been so difficult to deal with him. A serious expression appeared on Xiaozhen's face, because if he failed to beat the man in front of him, then there was no way he was going to last in TMU's assessment. Who are these 2? One seems to have arrived from the Southeast region. This is not the first time something like this is happening. Every time TMU opens its doors, battles like this take place all the time, basically to prove who's better. The other guy is Qiu Xinji, a rare genius of our Shunan Prefecture. Moreover, he is the younger brother of Qiu Longging, one of the 2 members of Ominous Wolf Duo. The spectators were talking among themselves and seemed very experienced. They had seen such battles not once or twice, and most of the times, they had witnessed the defeat of Southeastern experts. The wolf bites the tiger. Qiu Xinji suddenly congealed a fierce wolf made up of Zhen Yuan. The wolf roared and rushed towards Xiaozhen to tear him apart. Xiaozhen retreated again and again, and was trying to stay away from the wolf while charging up his sword-light attack. Ha ha ha, is this a so-called Southeastern genius? I see nothing but a loser who is about to die. Qiu Xinji's supporters started laughing and mocking the experts from the Southeast region. Jian Wuqing shook his head and said, Xiaozhen is indeed a talented guy, but he lacks inheritance. Yi Shiwen nodded. There truly was some disparity between the geniuses of the southeastern region and Ming Empire. Although there was amazing talent in the southeastern region, but the experts lacked inheritance that was actually abundant in a great empire like the Ming Empire. This was the reason why even the strongest experts of the Great Yu state, like Wu Patian, was not even an expert of these age realm. The old head was one of the few sage experts of the Great Yu state who died in battle, but in the Ming Empire, sage experts were not rare. There were several well-known sage experts in the Ming Empire. This gap was clear at a glance. The gap was even bigger when comparing the number of legendary experts. When the gap was so great while comparing high-level experts, it would naturally be even greater while comparing the younger generation. No wonder young geniuses like Xiaozhen lacked enough inheritance to compete with the geniuses of Ming Empire. In fact, this was why the young experts of the southeast region knew that this was going to be very dangerous for them. They were aware of the fact that they would have to face many strong opponents in the foreign land, but they still dared to embark on the journey, because only with such discipline and dedication, they would succeed in the future. Yi Shiwen was aware of this. After all, he was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. His father was not a top expert, so getting inheritance was out of the question. The only thing that helped Yi Shiwen come so far was the mysterious space, otherwise, he would be more desperate than others. Boom! Several fierce wolves came out of Qiu Xinzi's blade, and surrounded Xiaozhen from all sides. Xiaozhen was in a desperate situation right now, but he did not give up. He glared at Qiu Xinji then shouted, "One more try. I'll gladly help you die, come." Qiu Xinzi's cold smile indicated his killing intention as he commanded the fierce wolves to attack Xiaozhen at once. Boom, boom, boom. Xiaozhen's sword started to emit violent thunderbolts. A thunderbolt struck one of the fierce wolves, and its body exploded, turning into a bundle of energy and scattered in the atmosphere. However, there was a lot of fierce wolves. His thunder attacks were not enough to stop all wolves. The extent of Zhen Yuan used by Qiu Xinji to congeal these fierce wolves was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. After Xiaozhen managed to somehow get rid of all fierce wolves, suddenly, the figure of a person instantly appeared in front and shot a massive daoqi at him. Boom! Xiaozhen's sword managed to deflect the attack, but the sheer force present in the attack was enough to break his sword, and the impact sent him flying across the sky. Streams of blood oozed out of his wounded body as he fell down from the sky. Xiaozhen! His friends immediately fly up to catch him in midair, but were startled when they saw layer after layer of daoqi coming towards them. Qiu Xinji sneered and said, "You think I will allow you to save him?" Puff! 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 Xiaozhen's friends were blasted away by the barrage of daoqi attacks. "Stop, you are crossing the line now." Lu Yueru flew up and said. Seeing a beauty like her standing in his way, Qiu Xinzi's eye shone up. He smiled and said, "Listen, girl. I am no tyrant, but I just cannot ignore braggarts. I mean you southeastern experts who think so highly of yourselves. However, you girl, are you also going to TMU? I say, drop the plan. You won't last long if you stay with these losers. But you can come with me if you want. I will take good care of you and give you everything you ever desired." "No thanks, I'm not interested." Lu Yueru replied in a cold voice. "You can follow me. These southeastern losers are not worthy of you." Qiu Xinji laughed and extended his gasified big hand to grasp her. Suddenly, a shrill piercing sound echoed out of the blue. Humph! Jian Wuchen had shot a massive sword key that instantly collided with Qiu Xinzi's big gasified hand. Ah! Qiu Xinzi's big hand was cut down in a blink of an eye. If his hand was not wrapped in Zhen Yuan, it would have been truncated by now. "Who are you?" Qiu Xinji barely managed to speak while bearing the intense pain in his hand and heart. "How dare you attack me? I see you are angry. Don't you want to kill me now?" Jian Wuchen said calmly, but with a strange look on his face. "You are also an expert from the southeast region?" Qiu Xinji said in a disdainful tone. "Shut up. Let your blade do the talk." Jian Wuchen pointed his sword at him and said. Qiu Xinzi's complexion changed because he knew that Jian Wuchen was much stronger than him. Though he wasn't too scared of provoking southeastern powerhouses, because there were much stronger powerhouses on his side as well. Chapter 289. Nighttime Assassination Attempt. Qiu Xinzi's complexion suddenly changed when he realized that Jian Wuqian was much stronger than him. He also realized his mistake of having provoked a strong man from the southeast region. Indeed, the top figures of Ming Empire were superior to those of the southeast region, but they were not present here to save him. Jian Wuqian flew up slowly with a calm look on his face. At this time, the southeastern experts also recognized Jian Wuqian and Yi Shiwen. They had seen these two on the Demon Island. Of course, two famous geniuses from their homeland had come to their rescue. They would certainly feel proud. Now they could proudly claim that even their southeast region was home to rampant experts. It's him. Lu Yueru never expected to see Yi Shiwen like this. Although she had managed to sort things out with Yi Shiwen with the invention of Ji Moon, she still never thought that Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuqian would come to her rescue. Xiao Zhen's complexion also changed when he was saved by the intervention of Jian Wuqian off Yi Shiwen. There certainly used to be some hatred between him and Yi Shiwen, but that was long lost in the past. If you think you are skilled, why don't you go fight with Shunan Prefecture's strongest pair? Qiu Xinji somewhat sternly said. Sure, I will kill you first, then look for that pair you talk about. Jian Wuqian replied in an equally stern voice, without a hint of boasting visible in his presence. These were not his ruthless words. It was just the way his mind worked. He wanted to become a sword master, and must beat powerful foes to gain the status of the strongest sword master. You. Qiu Xinji's face turned pale because he could tell from Jian Wuqian's tightly locked killing intention that he was not lying. Shua. Qiu Xinji immediately attacked. He already wasn't considering himself an opponent of Jian Wuqian, so how could he possibly let his opponent gain the upper hand? Qiu Xinji released Bladiki almost instantly that transformed into several howling wolves and rushed towards Jian Wuqian. Jian Wuqian smiled as if this attack was not even worth his attention. He just waved his sword once and destroyed all wolves at once. His movements and his sword attack appeared slow to the naked eye, but were incredibly fast in reality. There was no way those wolves could dodge his attack, let alone approach his body. I never thought that there can be a sword master like him in the southeast region. A young expert couldn't help but admit that Jian Wuqian was indeed very strong, far more powerful than Qiu Xinji. Now you idiots will get to know that summer insects shouldn't talk the language of ice. At this time, one of the remaining teammates of Lu Yueru sneered and said, You called southeastern experts overreaching and thought we cannot have invincible experts. Well, guess what? The truth is that a mere prefecture like yours can never compete with our southeast region. Those young experts in silk clothes couldn't retaliate because they knew that Jian Wuqian was stronger than their Qiu Xinji, who was the strongest in their group. Before they could get a chance to think what to do next, the scene changed dramatically. Jian Wuqian shot a terrifying sword light that went across the sky and instantly routed Qiu Xinzi's offensive, continuing forward towards him. Puchi. Qiu Xinzi's entire right arm was directly cut down by the sword key and fell from the sky, followed by his loud scream. Jian Wuqian looked coldly at Qiu Xinji, then turned away without giving another glance. Such an opponent was basically not worth his time. You will regret it. Qiu Xinji shouted while trying his best to endure the severe pain. Jian Wuqian didn't say anything in reply, just turned around and returned to the side of Yi Shiwen. At this time, those young experts did not dare to wait anymore. They quickly picked up the chopped arm and escaped from there along with Qiu Xinji. They were not stupid and knew full well that now was not the time to take revenge. They must retreat for now and have their family and other formidable people to come forward. They obviously weren't Jian Wuqian's opponents, hence making him mad would not exactly be a good idea. Thanks you two, for coming to our rescue. Xiao Zhen ignored the old hatred for Yi Shiwen in his heart, bit the bullet, and showed a fair expression of gratitude. You don't need to thank me, this time I did nothing. Yi Shiwen smiled and said without showing any sign of hostility. This allowed Xiao Zhen to feel somewhat relieved, knowing that Yi Shiwen was willing to forget the past. Thanks a lot, both of you. Lu Yueru looked at both Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuqian and said, But it doesn't seem like they will give up. The path to TMU was very dangerous. Many people lost their lives on this path every time before the assessment. I would like to meet that Qiu Xinzi's ominous wolf brothers and play with them. Shunan's strongest pair sounds like formidable foes. I just hope they won't disappoint me. Yi Shiwen smiled as he was planning to defeat all his opponents sooner or later. That was what it meant to enter TMU via competition. Well, in that case, we will leave first. Lu Yueru said, although she would also like to stay, but she was not as bold and fearless as Yi Shiwen. What if there was a half-step legendary expert hidden in this city? Lu Yueru and her remaining team members left the scene. Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen went back to the inn and started waiting for the ominous wolf duo to come. Their willingness to fight was being fueled by the fact that the ominous wolf duo was at the top of the food chain around here, in the younger generation of Shunan Prefecture. After Jian Wuchen thoroughly defeated Qiu Xinji, the news about this incident sent entire Shunan Prefecture into chaos. For a long time, no powerhouse from the southeast region had been able to disrespect them like this. Many people wanted to teach Jian Wuchen and Yi Shiwen a lesson, but no one dared to get involved. Gradually, the curtain of the night covered the sky. There was an enchantment hidden within Yi Ziwen's robe that not just prevented the ongoing conversation from being heard by people outside the room, but also picked up signs of any trouble on the outside. Our journey is going to be difficult, Yi Shiwen said. These experts of truth 8th-9th stage are nothing. Let's pick a fight with half-step legendary experts. That should be fun, the wolf cub said. Just like Great Yi State, the main fighting force of Ming Empire was located in its imperial capital, including Sage Realm experts. Shunan Prefecture was located in the border region, and at most could offer half-step legendary experts as obstacles in their path. However, Yi Shiwen was determined to fight with much more powerful opponents in order to gain experience for his next breakthrough. The path you have taken so far has been paved on the bones of the fallen, Yi Mo said with a sigh. However, if that was not the case, then you wouldn't have grown so powerful, and that too so fast. Yi Shiwen didn't get a chance to reply as he was interrupted by an enormous coercion falling down from the sky. This coercion was not directed at others but only on Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen. Half-step legendary. The wolf cub immediately sensed the enemy's level. Right then, Jian Wuchen, who was in the next room, also sensed the enemy's presence and immediately shot a rippling sword key into the sky, directly overturning the roof in the process. Yi Shiwen also flew into the sky and saw the figure of a man, clad in a black robe, flying towards Jian Wuchen. There was a dagger in his hand and seemed to be quenched with some kind of poison, which especially made the dagger to reflect dark rays of light under the moonlight. He was extremely fast, with his physique and movements like a ghost in general, as he instantly arrived in front of Jian Wuchen and attacked with his dagger. The horrifying coercion of half-step legendary realm was firmly suppressing Jian Wuchen, almost making it impossible for him to move. Jian Wuchen roared in the sky and suddenly shot an enormous sword in tension that immediately shattered the coercion and freed him. I don't care what tricks you are using, my sword is enough to render all of them useless. Jian Wuchen rushed towards the half-step legendary assassin and struck with his sword. The assassin was taken aback and did not dare to face Jian Wuchen head-on. Although he was at half-step legendary realm, he majored in the ways of assassination. This enabled him to assassinate even legendary-level experts by making use of perfectly timed sneak attacks. However, that did not mean that he was very strong or something. His only strong trait was the art of effective sneak attack and instant assassination. In a real fight, he wouldn't stand a chance against even a strong expert of complete truth realm like Jian Wuchen. Failing to assassinate Jian Wuchen in time was his biggest mistake, and now that he wanted to escape, Jian Wuchen wouldn't let that happen. And even more frightening was the fact that he could feel a terrifying aura, as if tracing his entire being from the sidelines. Although the owner of this aura didn't go into action right away, they seemed all prepared to attack any time now. It was obvious that the assassin had no way to escape from this situation. Thinking of this, the assassin bit the bullet and clashed with Jian Wuchen. He first needed to deal with the sword master in front of him. Only then he might have a chance to run away from the owner of that scary aura. Yi Shiwen sneered and locked onto the assassin in midair using his imposing aura. Since Jian Wuchen had already jumped into the fight, he did not want to intervene. However, he also did not want the assassin to escape, so he used his imposing aura to greatly suppress the assassin's power. A well-planned sneak attack could have killed a legendary expert, but the assassin failed in doing so and also ended up revealing his presence. And the result was that he was on the verge of being killed by an expert of complete truth realm. This was the so-called art of deception, the art of assassination. Chapter 290, Ominous Wolf Attacks. Of course, the probability of being an expert of complete truth realm was very low. After all, the half-step legendary realm was not difficult to attain either. Clang! Jian Wuchen issued a terrifying sword light that lit up the sky, suddenly alarming the entire city. But the good news was that no one arrived to intervene or to make a fuss or anything. The only one who probably wanted to cry right now was the owner of the inn. The sword light was flying towards the assassin, and since Yi Shiwen was observing this battle from not far away, Jian Wuchen felt somewhat relieved. At this time, Yi Ziwen's presence was quite reassuring, especially because Jian Wuchen was dealing with an expert of half-step legendary realm. Thanks to that, the assassin was literally cornered, and that too to an extent that he suddenly roared and rushed toward Jian Wuchen like a cornered beast that had lost his calm. Despite being an expert of half-step legendary realm, the assassin was scared of Yi Shiwen. And if he didn't even manage to defeat a young sword master of complete truth realm, then he certainly wouldn't stand a chance against Yi Shiwen. Shua! The assassin's dagger released a poisonous beam that traveled across the sky. It seemed like a desperate attack that was aimed at Jian Wuchen. Jian Wuchen's face was expressionless, though his eyes were as sharp as a sword. The sword danced in his hand and easily deflected the poisonous beam. Immediately, the strong experts of this city began to talk to each other using soul links. They were discussing the fight going on between Jian Wuchen and the assassin. Is this man really from the southeast region? I never expected to see such a great master from the southeast region. To be honest, his opponent is at half-step legendary realm, but is just an assassin. I don't think this assassin will last long in a face-to-face battle. We must accept the fact that the southeastern region has talented people. If this guy manages to survive after what has done to Qiu in the coming 100 years, he will certainly become a formidable powerhouse. These soul link conversations certainly didn't bypass Yi Ziwen's radar. Yi Shiwen sneered and didn't seem particularly pleased from all these experts talking stuff about Jian Wuchen and the southeastern region. It was really laughable how much they had underestimated Jian Wuchen's potential. These people were extremely arrogant and had been like this for a long time. Indeed, the Ming Empire was more powerful than the Great Yu State, but that didn't mean that the entire southeastern region would also lie in the same category. It seemed like the domineering attitude of Qiu Xinji and his friends was a result of the contaminated mindset continuing from previous generations. Boom, boom, boom. The two experts continued to clash again and again in the sky. The assassin was fast like a ghost in general, but Jian Wuchen's speed was quickly growing fast perceptibly. Boom! An enormous burst of energy swept off in all directions, cutting a deep dagger wound in his chest almost instantly. His complexion turned green due to the instant poisoning. The assassin was also in a bad shape. Jian Wuchen's sword had cut open a large hole in his abdomen. Both of them staggered a bit, then immediately rushed towards each other. Jian Wuchen waved his sword and issued a sword intention that suddenly transformed into a massive sword light and went towards his opponent. This attack was lightning fast and arrived right above the assassin's head in a blink of an eye. The spectators held their breaths at this scene. Some of them were in half-step legendary realm and were strong enough to wreak havoc in this city, but even they could feel the insane amount of power contained in Jian Wuchen's attack. They were forced to accept the fact that Jian Wuchen's sword attacks were dangerous and must not be taken lightly. Today, Jian Wuchen used his skills and talent to make several experts envious of him. Boom! The sword light suddenly transformed into a massive double-edged sword, right in front of the assassin. Boom! The assassin's hand transformed into a tiger's mouth, and it tried to grab the incoming flying sword. However, the inherent power contained his defense-type attack was not enough to stop Jian Wuchen's offensive. Boom! The assassin was knocked down by the enormous explosion that took place after the collision. His body severely pounded on the ground, making a humanoid-shaped pit in the ground. And at this time, Jian Wuchen arrived right above the assassin and attacked with his sword. Boom! The assassin was directly beheaded by Jian Wuchen. Jian Wuchen had won the fight, but his complexion was deathly pale. His body was drenched with blood, but more importantly, the poison had already spread throughout his body and was affecting his body functions. If he had not been using his own sword key to defend against the poison, he would be dead by now. Are you all right? It seems you are poisoned. Yi Shiwen asked. I am fine. I can fix this, but I may need to spend some time in closed-door rest. Jian Wuchen said. No problem. If that ominous wolf comes looking for you, I will make him entertain me properly to my heart's content. Yi Shiwen grinned, and appeared all ready to fight whenever required. Anyway, the attitude of Qiu Xinji and his clan had already pissed him off. They looked for another inn to rest. Jian Wuchen started to take rest and heal himself. Although he was severely injured in the fight, he told Yi Shiwen that he also gained a lot of benefits. Next day, when Yi Shiwen was busy cultivating and exercising his powers in the mysterious space, suddenly a terrifying aura appeared out of nowhere and pressed down. It seemed as if the aura belonged to a beast, making Yi Shiwen feel like he had stepped into a beast's den. Where are those two troublemakers from the southeast region who have a death wish? Come out! A hoarse voice sounded from the sky. There was a hint of beastly roar in this voice. Yi Shiwen saw the figure of a man standing in the sky. He was clad in military clothing, had rough facial features while his face was covered with hair. He had deep green eyes, and as soon as he howled like a wolf, an endless amount of killing intention spread everywhere. Everyone started fleeing from the streets because they were too scared from his beast's aura. Right now he appeared just like a werewolf bathing in milky moonlight. Who is this man? You don't know who he is? Well, I cannot expect outsiders to know about our Shunan Prefecture's famous ominous wolf duo. This person and the eldest son of our city lord together make the ominous wolf duo. This person is named Qiu Wolf. He is the most distinguished disciple of Qiu clan. People say that he was once caught by a wolf demon beast in his childhood, but was saved later on. He was infected back then, and has since inherited the beast's traits of demon wolf race. He is not even 50 years old, and has still become one of the two top players in the younger generation of Shunan Prefecture. Well, this is called being fortunate by mistake, but why does he appear so angry? An expert from the southeast region has chopped his younger brother's arm. He has come to take revenge. Everyone was trembling with fear. They could not stand this kind of terrible beastly killing intention. No one could withstand such a killing intention. Boom. An imposing aura exploded from inside the inn, and a figure jumped out. Was it you who hurt my younger brother? Qiu Wolf asked and growled at the same time while stubbornly staring at Yi Shiwen like a wolf. No. Yi Shiwen shook his head. If I had fought with him, he would be dead right now. Yi Shiwen answered in an indifferent voice. You are courting death. Qiu Wolf said in a furious tone. Who do you think you are? Yi Shiwen sneered. Oh right. How can I forget? You are one of the Shunan Prefecture's idiotic duo. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly and said. Qiu Wolf's complexion changed immediately. After all, since the day he obtained this title, nobody had dared to make fun of him. I will tear you apart with my own hands, just you watch. Qiu Wolf's imposing aura scattered in all directions and tightly locked onto Yi Shiwen. Tear me apart, you say? I would like you to try. Yi Shiwen stopped laughing and a cold look flashed in his eyes. His body was instantly enveloped in golden divine clothing, and a violent godly aura spread in all directions. It seemed as if the true god of the 10,000 worlds had suddenly appeared, and all must grovel in front of him. Chapter 291. Showdown with the ominous wolf. Two sets of terrifying breaths severely crashed into each other high in the sky. My claws will tear you apart. Qiu Wolf laughed and his wild imposing aura swept out. It seemed as if he was simply looking down on Yi Shiwen. One must know that Qiu Wolf was one of the most competent candidates that were going to participate in TMU assessment. He wouldn't have bothered to come and challenge Yi Shiwen and Jian Wuchen if his younger brother was not involved in this mess. He was a peerless genius of this area, and had already stepped into half-step legendary realm a long time ago. His tyrannical strength was unmatched in the younger generation of Shunan Prefecture, so how could he ever consider a southeastern young expert like Yi Shiwen his opponent? Yi Shiwen was closely keeping an eye on this half-step legendary expert who was no less than a beast, a very terrifying being with tyrannical presence. Some of the onlookers were frightened, including several experts of complete truth realm, and there were few half-step legendary experts in the crowd as well, but even they were in a similar state of shock. After all, even they couldn't be compared with Qiu Wolf, who was able to achieve half-step legendary realm in a matter of few decades, establishing himself as a peerless genius of Shunan Prefecture. They were even more shocked to see that Yi Shiwen was practically unaffected by the strong waves of Qiu Wolf's imposing aura, when they themselves were affected to the extent of backing off. Die! Qiu Wolf bellowed and sent clouds surging across the sky. Qiu Wolf's roar was accompanied by a terrifying burst of bladiki that transformed into a giant blue wolf and raided all the way down from the sky, opening its mouth to swallow Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen stamped his foot on the ground once, and a large section of the city collapsed instantly by the explosion of divinities. His golden divine clothes were dancing in the wind, giving the illusion of a mighty god in human form. Bang! The blue wolf and the golden divinities collided in midair and led to a massive explosion, sweeping an endless amount of energy and shock waves in all directions. The blue wolf opened its big mouth wide and roared again and again, but was unable to approach Yi Shiwen. However, just then, Yi Shiwen rushed forward and used his golden tyrant hands to grab its upper and lower fangs. Yi Shiwen could smell a fishy smell coming out of its mouth, although it was just condensed out of Lingqi, but was abnormally realistic. Yi Shiwen immediately understood that this blue wolf was actually an ancient secret heritage obtained from some high-level demon wolf beast, and perhaps this was the reason why it contained a share of its original powers. Boom! Golden divinities exploded out of Yi Ziwen's body and soared straight into the sky along with a loud explosion. The true mythical power of gilded tyrant form revealed itself properly, and the blue wolf was directly torn into two halves by Yi Shiwen. The recurring explosions set off endless shock waves in all directions, reaching all the way to the crowd watching from afar. I never thought that you can actually have so much strength. Qiu Wolf looked at Yi Shiwen with a color of surprise in his eyes. In fact, he never expected for his offensive to be completely wiped out by Yi Shiwen, and that too with just his bare hands. The golden divinities were crawling on Yi Ziwen's body while his killing intention was increasing significantly. There wasn't the slightest trace fear in his heart. But today you shall die, Qiu Wolf said coldly. Well, at least you have made me excited for this battle. Qiu Wolf's facial expression revealed a bit of excitement along with anticipation. However, there was an ever-present cold and cruel look in his dark green beastly eyes. Boom! Qiu Wolf struck with his blade horizontally and wildly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. The impact of this attack was so terrific that with each of his steps, the entire world seemed to be trembling as if a god had set out to destroy the world. Come! Yi Shiwen roared, then took out his long blade and released a horrifying blade light, powerful enough to shatter the space in its way. This appeared like a battle between two accomplished experts of half-step legendary realm. Numerous experts were stunned after witnessing the current scene, especially those chief experts who were rooting for Qiu Wolf. They were kind of frightened and dumbstruck at the same time while witnessing the true potential and power of the two leading characters from the younger generation. They were used to witnessing battles like this every time TMU opened its gates to take in new disciples, but had never seen such a magnificent battle between two peerless geniuses, each exceeding the barriers of the level they were in. Especially Yi Shiwen, who was just an expert of Truth Realm, but was still able to fight on equal grounds with Qiu Wolf. In fact, Jian Wuchen would also be considered an evildoer like Yi Shiwen since he defeated a half-step legendary assassin a day ago. However, Jian Wuchen's achievement wasn't as astonishing as Yi Ziwen's since that half-step legendary assassin was not as strong as Qiu Wolf. Boom! The two experts continued to clash again and again at a very high altitude, blasting away clouds everywhere in the sky while the whole city was being showered in colorful flashes of lights time and time again. Jian Wuchen was aware of Yi Ziwen's ongoing battle, but chose to have faith in him, and continued to stay indoors. The small cub was also not interested in watching this battle, and went for closed-door practice as well. Boom! 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 Both of them were using blades and constantly brandishing blade attacks as if to test who was a better blade master. Chiu Wolf's style of using blade was similar to that of the famous Wolf King, who was also the king of 100 beasts from ancient times. However, Yi Zaiwen's blade skills were more conventional and true to the world laws of the blade, and in coordination with gilded tyrant form, the overall might of his blade attacks was incomparably tyrannical. From the beginning, the two men were not using sophisticated blade skills to compete. Instead, they were relying more on the amount of energy contained in their bladiki attacks. The sheer amount of energy contained in these blade attacks was insane. There was just no way to block or resist any of these blade attacks. In a while, these blade attacks started to show results, and Chiu Wolf's body was covered in wounds and blood all over. Although Yi Zaiwen's body was covered in blood, there were no signs of wounds anywhere on his body thanks to the instant regeneration provided by Phoenix Regeneration. Yi Shiwen had the advantage of a good combination of Phoenix Regeneration and Gilded Tyrant form, but Chiu Wolf's body also had an extremely tyrannical constitution, like that of an ancient wolf demon in general. No one knew what kind of inheritance he had obtained, but his body was insanely tough. Chiu Wolf was also capable of healing, but a lot slower than Yi Zaiwen's Phoenix Regeneration. Chiu Wolf had simply gone berserk right now. His eyes had become red from dark green. It seemed like he had lost his mind due to anger, and was blindly attacking Yi Shiwen without waiting for his wounds to heal first. The two experts were going all out and showing no restraints whatsoever. Suddenly, they started to test the level of each other's blade skills, and proceeded to use ideal conditions. Yi Shiwen immediately summoned the ideal condition of his blade technique in the form of a huge moon diagram that appeared in the sky and dropped towards Chiu Wolf. The moon diagram that appeared this time was not the same as earlier. This time, it contained a strong cold and ominous feeling in the form of dazzling white color on one half of the moon, while an endless dark and gloomy color on the other. The spectators were simply unable to look straight ahead, perplexed by the strange and conflicting nature of this moon diagram. This was the result of the integration of sword intention into the ideal condition. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the Cold Moon Beheader to possess such an overbearing presence. This new version of Cold Moon Beheader was specially developed by Yi Shiwen to deal with high-level experts. And Yi Zaiwen's ideal condition had outdone Chiu Wolf's ideal condition, which was in the form of a diagram, showing a pack of wolves running in a vast wilderness. The two diagrams collided in the sky and mutually devoured each other, while at the same time, the two experts mercilessly clashed with each other. The spectators were frightened by this scene that literally shook the entire city. Most experts had comprehended the ideal condition of a martial technique at some point of time in their lives, but they had never seen something like the moon diagram congealed by Yi Shiwen. It was simply on a whole another level, simply out of their reach. In fact, they would never get to know that Yi Shiwen was able to comprehend this ideal condition when he used to be in Hotian realm. Yes, this was the difference between them and Yi Shiwen. There were many experts who simply weren't able to comprehend an ideal condition, and used brute force to compensate for the lack of skill. Not to mention, the difficulty of comprehension was more for high-level martial techniques. It was even more difficult to create a new version of ideal condition. Yi Shiwen was able to do it because he had the support of the mysterious space. The scene had been reversed at this time. This time, Yi Shiwen bellowed and released a rippling bladiki that transformed into a coiling dragon midway, and flew towards Chiu Wolf. Chapter 292. Ominous Wolf killed the coiling dragon. Condensed from bladiki dived down, and overran the enemy. Boom. Chiu Wolf had no time to dodge, and the bladiki cut open a large wound on his chest. A wound so hideous and terrible that it seemed like his chest had sunken terribly into a deep concave. His ribs bent inwards and pieced his internal organs. The wound looked so terrifying that an ordinary person wouldn't bear to look at it. However, the enemy's blade attack had also cut open a wound on Yi Zaiwen's waist. It looked like a serious wound from which blood was spattering in all directions. Is it over? Damn, don't tell me the strongest genius of our Shunan prefecture has fallen already? Many powerhouses who were observing this battle sighed woefully. Although they not necessarily liked Chiu Wolf, but seeing their own being thoroughly suppressed by an outsider was something they were not ready to accept. Is that guy from Southeast region really that strong? In contrast to the pale complexion on Chiu Wolf's face, Yi Zaiwen's facial expression was simply unchanged even though both of them were severely injured. Of course, Yi Shiwen wasn't much affected by such injuries since the Phoenix regeneration technique was constantly working and healing his injuries nonstop. Shwa! Shwa! Roar! Roar! After being seriously injured, Chiu Wolf started growling loudly, and his body started to transform. His whole body was slowly covered with green hair, and his hands turned into sharp claws. The people from Yi Zaiwen's past world would call Chiu Wolf him a werewolf after this transformation. The wound in his chest began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. What is going on? The spectators were shocked by this scene, as they had never seen Chiu Wolf transforming like this before. Perhaps Chiu Wolf never got to face a formidable opponent like Yi Shiwen, who literally pushed him to the point of resorting to using this transformation to fight back. Yi Shiwen appeared dignified and was not all affected even when Chiu Wolf's aura was changing little by little, turning more imposing and terrifying. I think this guy has probably fused the blood of a demon god with his own blood. Yi Emo said. I guess this is enough to call him a relative of our wolf cub in a way. Yi Shiwen smiled. Perhaps there really was such a possibility that the ancestors of the wolf cub and Chiu Wolf were related. However, Yi Shiwen did not wait to think about all this stuff as he heard a loud roar, and saw the monstrous figure of a ferocious green beast standing in front of him. Boom! Chiu Wolf simply abandoned using blade attacks, and directly punched towards Yi Shiwen. The power contained in his punch was so enormous that it punched through space, creating a large void in the sky. Yi Shiwen sneered and issued an equally enormous blade attack, along with coiling dragon palm, that summoned a gigantic black dragon from the depths of abyss. It roared loudly and immediately wrapped Yi Shiwen to form a solid defense, strong enough to block enemies' punch. Bang! The two attacks collided, and the resulting explosion set off layer after layer of energy waves in all directions. The good thing was that the battle was going at a very high altitude, otherwise, this explosion toward the beat go, so that both sides are in high altitude, otherwise, the explosion would have destroyed the entire city in one fell swoop. I will eat you, Chiu Wolf said in a beastly voice while salivating heavily through the corners of his mouth. Your blood has the kind of flavor I like. I will eat you whole and my cultivation will increase by 1 level, ha 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 ha. After Chiu Wolf turned into a werewolf, his humanity had been overtaken by the demon nature of the wolf god. Now he could instinctively sense the divinities contained within Yi Zaiwen's body, and wanted to seize them for nourishment. Boom! Chiu Wolf suddenly took a step forward and disappeared, instantly trampled through the void in the form of a green torrent rushing towards Yi Shiwen. You want to eat me? Get lost. Yi Zaiwen's eyes flashed with killing intention as he suddenly kicked the green torrent as soon as it approached him. Boom! The mighty torrent of greenish energy was instantly dissipated by Yi Zaiwen's kick, exposing the huge figure of Chiu Wolf. Chiu Wolf never expected to actually see his attack being kicked away by Yi Shiwen. After transforming into a werewolf, not even an expert of the legendary first stage could rival his horrifying strength, let alone an expert of complete truth realm like Yi Shiwen. Directly coming in contact with such terrific power was equivalent to seeking death. But Yi Shiwen actually kicked his energy-based torrent attack as if it was nothing. Of course, how could he ever know about Yi Zaiwen's tyrant body technique that enabled him to come in contact with gods and devil, and even tear them to shreds with his bare hands if needed? Not to mention, now he had practiced an enhanced version of the same technique, the gilded tyrant form that allowed him to contend with all sorts of terrifying forces. Even if Yi Shiwen was now at complete truth realm, his strength was more than enough to deal with the likes of Chiu Wolf in werewolf form. Ha! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and his right foot was suddenly enveloped by an extremely potent golden energy. Then he launched a kick at Chiu Wolf and sent him flying across the sky. Yi Shiwen immediately chased down at an incredibly fast speed, and simultaneously summoned Hans Seal in the sky that directly smashed down towards Chiu Wolf while he was still in midair. Howl! Chiu Wolf howled and immediately released the massive shadow of a blue wolf that was made up of pure energy. It immediately opened its huge mouth as if to devour the Hans Seal in one go. Boom! The blue wolf directly collided with Hans Seal and vaporized instantly. However, Chill Wolf seized this chance to escape. The blue wolf's body had turned into blood fog that was automatically absorbed by Yi Zaiwen's gilded tyrant form and added to his divinities collection. The traces of divinities present in the blue wolf's dissipated body truly indicated that Chill Wolf had obtained the heritage of an ancient demon god, and hence contained pure divinities in his blood. It was not strange for people to have various types of strange heritage, and even Yi Shiwen had a fair share of his own heritages, including Coiling Dragon Palm, Han Seal, Phoenix Regeneration and the Mysterious Space. However, Yi Shiwen was not willing to show mercy to Chill Wolf no matter what. A coiling dragon suddenly appeared in the sky and roared towards Chill Wolf. By now, everyone had come to accept that Yi Shiwen was much more powerful than Chill Wolf. In fact, this battle had been like a game for Yi Shiwen since the beginning. But now he was being serious in taking down Chill Wolf. And the result was such magnificent display of power. Boom, boom, boom. The entire sky above Shunan City was filled with terrifying explosions as the two experts went all out. The battle had entered a superheated phase, but it was not hard to figure out that Yi Shiwen was completely prevailing. The spectators never expected in the beginning of the fight that Chill Wolf would completely fall under the wind like this, and that too after transforming into a werewolf. None had ever seen Chill Wolf completely fall under the wind. The initial ferociousness and beastly dominance of Chill Wolf was no longer to be seen anywhere. His beastly instincts were telling him to run away from Yi Shiwen. And at this time, the combined attacks of Coiling Dragon and Han Seal had simply suppressed him thoroughly to the extent of rendering him unable to fight back. Ah! Chill Wolf howled when he was unable to bear the intense attacks even if he was in a werewolf form. His wounds were getting more and more severely and no longer healing quickly. However, Yi Shiwen was showing no signs of weakening. This was the most frightening thing about facing an opponent like Yi Shiwen who didn't show signs of wearing down even after prolonged battles. Yi Zaiwen's true power had gone far beyond his imagination, to the point of making him feel inferior. He could not go on fighting with Yi Shiwen since his own injuries were getting worse while there was no visible damage done to the enemy. Chill Wolf continued to roar again, and again while his body hair grew longer. He almost transformed into a blue wolf himself, and pounced towards Yi Shiwen. Boom! Yi Shiwen shot a palm and released a coiling dragon towards him. Bang! Chill Wolf's beastly body was instantly sent flying after a fierce collision with the coiling dragon. Yi Shiwen didn't waste time, and immediately summoned Han Seal in the sky that transformed into a huge mountain, and descended towards Chill Wolf who was still in midair. Stop! At this time, a loud voice transmitted from the city and a big hand as if torn open the space itself, and went towards Han Seal to stop it in its path. Yi Shiwen sneered, and without showing any mercy, he increased the falling speed of Han Seal, and smashed it down upon Chill Wolf. Boom! As soon as Chill Wolf's body came in contact with Han Seal, it transformed into a vague mass of blood fog, and the divinities contained in that mass of blood fog was instantly absorbed into Yi Zaiwen's body. Comment from author. Some people are raising doubts about half-step legendary realm, so let me explain again in detail. Half-step legendary realm is just a standard to measure whether someone is a genius or not. It is a lot harder to have a breakthrough inside half-step legendary realm than in legendary realm. Most people find it easy to directly step into legendary realm from half-step legendary realm. Only true geniuses are able to control their cultivation to the extent that they are able to have breakthroughs within half-step legendary realm, without entering the legendary realm. Only a true genius can stop himself from stepping into the legendary realm, and accumulate within half-step legendary realm. Also, each stage within half-step legendary realm is much harder to get to and also grants much larger power in comparison to the corresponding stage on the legendary realm. For example, if a person is at half-step legendary 4th stage, and he decided to have a breakthrough into the legendary realm, then he would directly reach the legendary 4th stage, or even above that depending upon the depth of his accumulation. Similarly, if a person is at half-step legendary 9th stage, and decided to have a breakthrough into the legendary realm, he cannot, because he would directly step into Sage realm. All experts try their best to stay at half-step legendary realm, and accumulate because this is the fastest way to reach Sage realm. Those who fail to do so ultimately give up and step into the legendary first stage. However, they reach a bottleneck after reaching legendary fourth or fifth stage, and are stuck there forever. That is why only true geniuses can step into Sage Realm, and they choose the best method of doing so by staying at half-step legendary realm and accumulating. By doing so, they can entirely skip the legendary realm and directly step into Sage Realm. Some people choose to stop accumulating at half-step legendary 5th stage and go for a breakthrough into the legendary 6th stage, then continue forward. Some people choose to accumulate all the way to half-step legendary 9th stage and before directly breaking into Sage Realm. Half-step legendary realm may appear as a redundant realm, but it is actually an important filter to separate true geniuses from ordinary ones. I know that many readers were unable to understand the concept because they skipped the paragraphs where it was explained in detail. This concept is not very complicated, just needs a bit of patience from the reader's side. I will try to simplify these concepts as much as possible in future chapters. Chapter 293. Escapes into the heavenly calamity. Yi Zaiwen's body completely absorbed the divinities, which almost immediately transformed into a roaring spirit wolf inside Yi Zaiwen's world of consciousness and attacked his soul, as if to swallow his soul entirely and turn him into a host. This world of consciousness within Yi Shiwen was like a sea of consciousness, entirely composed of golden divinities. The spirit wolf wanted to stir up trouble and gain control over this sea of consciousness, but was immediately absorbed into the sea instead. Once the absorption was over, Yi Shiwen felt a huge progress in his gilded tyrant form, since the density and toughness of his golden body was directly proportional to the amount of divinities present in the sea of consciousness. On the outside, Yi Shiwen immediately reacted by running away from there when a large hand suddenly clutched over and literally crushed the surrounding space in its path. It did not stop and instantly went towards Yi Shiwen to crush him to death. This expert's heightened anger was evident from his actions. Yi Shiwen was being chased by a legendary expert, so he did not dare to rush in the direction of the inn where the wolf cub and Jian Wuchen were undergoing closed-door training. Instead, he fled in the opposite direction, trying his best to lead his pursuer out of the city. One must remember that Yi Shiwen had been able to kill legendary-level devils during the Devil Siege on Yiyuan School, because of the suppression effect of Tianyuan Mirror on devils. The same strategy was not going to work on a human expert of legendary realm. Yi Shiwen was certainly aware of the terrifying powers of a true legendary expert. He was also aware of the difference between half-step legendary realm and legendary realm, which was only for determining the difference between true geniuses and non-geniuses. Only true geniuses were able to stay in half-step legendary realm for accumulation. Much more powerful geniuses also enjoyed stronger and profound accumulation. They could even skip legendary realm altogether and directly step into Sage Realm with a single breakthrough. First you kill Archeo Wolf and then you plan to just walk away? A hoarse voice said in a furious tone, and a sizzling energy burst out of that big hand. The entire space, in an instant, was blockaded, and it seemed as if a huge heavenly cage suddenly fell upon Yi Shiwen and entrapped him, making it difficult for him to escape. Today, I must make you pay the price with your blood. An old man's figure appeared in the distance, literally out of nowhere. Yi Shiwen suddenly roared, and his body was enveloped within a thick layer of golden energy that suddenly exploded and destroyed the blockaded space. The very next instant, a pair of golden devil wings flapped behind his back and launched him forward at an incredibly fast speed. The old expert was taken aback when Yi Shiwen destroyed his cage and flew several miles away from him in a blink of an eye. He then immediately pulled out a series of attacks that directly bent the space at multiple spots in the sky, acting as a slingshot to send his emancipated body darting forward towards Yi Shiwen at a much faster speed. This legendary expert had already understood the world laws of space, and could bend and manipulate space easily to gain incredible speed or create space cages. It was simply impossible for Yi Shiwen to beat a seasoned expert of legendary realm. If not for Yi Zaiwen's miraculous devil wings, his speed wouldn't even be comparable to that of a legendary expert, especially with space manipulation powers. Humph! The old man snorted and shot a divine beam at Yi Shiwen. Boom! The divine beam arrived right in front of Yi Shiwen in a blink of an eye and crashed into his body. He spat a mouthful of blood, staggered a bit, and almost dropped down from the sky. This gave the old man enough time to shorten the distance between them. You can't deal with this old monster. He is out of your league. Yi Mo appeared on Yi Shiwen's shoulder and said, Ming Empire is truly prosperous, as they say. Even a small prefecture like Shunan is home to a legendary expert. Forget all that for now. We need to get rid of him as soon as possible. Yi Shiwen wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth. This legendary expert was too terrifying, powerful enough to cripple him with one move. If an ordinary expert of complete truth realm was there in his shoes just now, they would be dead by now. In fact, even an expert of half-step legendary realm didn't stand a chance against this old man. Yi Zaiwen's tyrant body technique was really tyrannical, enough to save his life from the last attack. Phoenix regeneration was constantly working to regenerate his wounds, and that too within few breaths worth of time. This guy knows space laws and 2 levels above you. Escape is our only option. Yi Mo said. Yi Shiwen was extremely fast, covering hundreds of miles in a blink of an eye, but the old man was chasing him down unceasingly, showing no signs of let him off. This old expert's anger was real deal. After all, Shunan Prefecture lost their strongest nurtured genius who was going to represent them in TMU assessment. Although Shunan Prefecture was considered quite influential, its importance was considered nothing much in rest of the Ming Empire. And after putting so much effort and resources in cultivation a true genius like Qiu Wolf, he was killed by an outsider so effortlessly. Only Yi Zaiwen's death could bring peace to his raging heart. Not only you are going to die, your family and anyone remotely related to you will be killed. I will go find your relatives and friends in the southeast region and kill them one by one in the most brutal ways possible. And remember, you are the reason behind their imminent sufferings. The old man gritted his teeth and threatened Yi Shiwen. Fuck you, old bastard. Yi Shiwen got immensely angry at this moment. He could not stand someone threatening the safety and security of his family and friends. The old man's facial expression looked even grimmer as he once again shot a divine beam towards Yi Shiwen. But this time, Yi Shiwen quickly turned around and shot his palm to block the attack. The tyrannical power present in this attack shook his entire being, almost to the extent of breaking his bones. Any ordinary expert would have long been dead, but Yi Shiwen still continued to fly forward tenaciously. Yi Shiwen did not know for how long he continued to fly, but he seemed to have come out of Shunan border. There were traces of wounds still visible on his body since the severity of his injuries had now exceeded the instant healing capacity of Phoenix generation. Now it took longer time for the wounds to heal. The old man was still in hot pursuit. At this time, Yi Shiwen saw a massive lightning flash in a large group of clouds floating not far from him. Is someone challenging the heavenly calamity? No, it is not a person but a demon beast. Yi Mo suddenly shouted. Yi Shiwen suddenly hesitated. One must know that whether human experts of demon beasts, all must face the threat of challenging the heavenly calamity to step into the legendary realm. The legendary realm was said to induce the beginning of the transcendental change from the time someone challenged the heavenly calamity, while having a breakthrough from half-step legendary realm to legendary realm, or from legendary realm to sage realm. In fact, even stage-wise breakthroughs within the legendary realm needed to challenge the heavenly calamity. The so-called heavenly calamity's very function was to stop mortal beings from surpassing the very laws of heaven and earth. After all, sickness and death were also part of world laws, and the emergence of a legendary warrior would certainly violate this rule by increasing the lifespan to 1,000 years. Heavenly calamity was a challenge put evenly in front of demon beasts and human being, while having a breakthrough to the legendary realm. The same law of challenge and punishment applied to not just to demon beasts and human beings, but also to other species. The breakthroughs within half-step legendary realm from one stage to another required a small heavenly calamity in comparison. But each breakthrough within legendary realm required larger heavenly calamity. It was said that only the person having a breakthrough must alone face the heavenly calamity. Any help or tricks would cause the heavenly calamity to go berserk. But right now, Yi Shiwen only had the choice to use this heavenly calamity as a shield to save himself from the old man. Boom. Yi Zaiwen's sudden intrusion aroused endless thunderbolts to go berserk. It seemed as if the heavenly calamity had been provoked, and an inexhaustible of thunderbolts was dropping down to attack Yi Shiwen. Damn. The old man stopped next to the heavenly calamity with clear signs of fear on his face. He still remembered his own deadly encounter with a similar heavenly calamity, while having a breakthrough from the half-step legendary realm to the legendary realm. This was the main reason why there were so many half-step legendary experts, but only a handful of legendary experts. The simply different between them was the confidence and bravery to challenge the heavenly calamity. Most half-step legendary experts preferred playing it safe, and hence chose to stay in half-step legendary realm until they were confident enough to challenge the heavens. Watching how Yi Shiwen had been completely submerged in thunder calamity, the old man's facial expression revealed a pleasant look along with slight traces of regret for not killing him personally. Chapter 294. Heavenly Calamity quenches the body. Anyone that messed with the heavenly calamity was bound to face its wrath. Even if a sage expert was to enter the domain of heavenly calamity, it would immediately calibrate itself to the degree of sage realm. So in the end, it was not possible for an outsider to interfere with someone's breakthrough. It was in a way mandatory for an expert to go through the heavenly tribulation on their own in order to level up. Hence, the old man naturally did not dare to approach the ongoing heavenly calamity. He speculated that it was probably a demon beast having a breakthrough from half-step to legendary realm. He stayed there and continued to observe for a long time, only to find out that the range of this heavenly calamity was getting bigger and bigger, and was now about to approach him. He made a decision to get out of there. He didn't want to mess with heavenly calamity and end his life in the process. In his view, Yi Shiwen was certainly dead already, since the heavenly calamity was calibrated accordingly for a breakthrough into the legendary realm, whereas Yi Shiwen was only at complete truth realm. In other words, the heavenly calamity didn't need to recalibrate itself to kill Yi Shiwen since he was at a lower level. Not to mention, the old man knew about incidents where higher-level experts had died while trying to help their juniors by entering the domain of heavenly calamity. Coming out alive from the domain of heavenly calamity was something unheard of. At this time, Yi Shiwen had no time to pay attention to the old man, because he had already guessed what the old man was thinking right now. Not to mention, he really needed to focus on the tragedy he was facing right now. But the old man's calculation lacked a very important element. He thought that Yi Shiwen was at complete truth realm, and must have used some tricks to defeat Xie Wolf. It was obviously impossible for an expert of complete truth realm to survive the dreadful impact of heavenly calamity. He didn't know about Yi Zaiwen's actual strength and the content of energy within his tyrannical gilded body. The old man was too satisfied with the present situation and seemed to have overlooked a very important point. Why would Yi Shiwen knowingly take such a suicidal step and jump into the domain of heavenly calamity? Yi Shiwen's tyrannical and divine gilded body had saved his life. An ordinary expert would be dead by now. However, several bruises and lacerated wounds could be seen all over his golden body, clearly showing the terrifying and destructive power of heavenly calamity. Shwa shwa. Several hundred electric snakes swooped down from the dark clouds and attacked Yi Zaiwen's body. Yi Shiwen was completely motionless, but his gilded tyrant form was continuously enhancing at a very fast pace. His whole body was surrounded by golden rays of light rising from all directions, which then transformed into golden swords and hacked the electric snakes. Bang! 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 Intermittent fierce explosions occurred all around him that gave rise to a violent storm. The electric snakes were swept away in all directions and wreaked havoc everywhere. Yi Shiwen, I know a devil technique that will allow your gilded tyrant form to completely absorb all this rogue energy of the heavenly calamity for working out your body. Yi Mo's excited voice sounded in Yi Zaiwen's mind. Yi Shiwen nodded at Yi Mo's advice. After all, he had no other options anyway. As long as he could turn this tragic situation into just another training session, he would be satisfied. He would very much like to absorb all this free energy to make his gilded tyrant body even more tyrannical. Although he wanted to enhance his gilded tyrant body to the next layer, He didn't know how long this heavenly calamity was going to last. Crash bang. All of a sudden, a disastrous lightning crashed down right upon Yi Shiwen. Bang, bang, bang. The massive lightning fragmented into several electric snakes and literally started ravaging his body from all sides. In a flash, there was blue smoke all around his body. This attack was enough to vaporize an expert of complete truth realm. However, Yi Shiwen was unmoved and basically, willingly, allowed these lightning serpents to ravage his body. Tyrant body technique was actively revolving within his body while his golden body was sucking the lightning energy like a sponge, all the while nourishing his flesh. It was a shocking scene since no one had heard of someone actually bathing in a heavenly calamity to nurture their body. A strange golden divine energy was circulating within his body and breaking down the absorbed electric serpents, transforming them into pure energy to act as a tonic for his flesh and bones. His tyrant body technique was also constantly promoting, ascending towards the next layer. It seemed like the non-stop bombardment of electric snakes would make him deaf, but he kept on focusing on operating various martial techniques to keep the strengthening process going. However, the heavenly calamity didn't seem to finish anytime soon. In fact, it continued to get even more intense with passing time. The electric snakes, dropping down from the inked sky, had literally started to rain down upon Yi Shiwen. Even the size and power of each electric snake had increased dramatically, making them appear like thunder dragons coming down to swallow Yi Shiwen. From afar, it appeared like a small figure was sitting cross-legged in midair, and thunder dragons were continuously ravaging his body. The entire scene was riddled with lightning flashes and deafening thunderclaps. All one could see was a seemingly insignificant silhouette of Yi Shiwen, submerged in a sea of lightning. Yi Shiwen did not dare to relax even for a second. The tyrant body technique was working nonstop while his entire body was enveloped with some kind of blue smoke emanating from his body that was being constantly ravaged. It seemed like his body was literally on fire and burning intensely. Yi Shiwen was sitting in midair in order to avoid conduction of electricity to the ground while his own body was being bruised and lacerated again and again. In fact, his skin had begun to burn at multiple places, giving just a glimpse of the terrific power of heavenly calamity. Yi Shiwen's complexion turned somewhat pale since he was relying on tyrant body technique, practiced to the third layer. It was not sufficient to deal with the present situation, so he was aiming to enhance it to the fourth layer. A few months ago he had managed to reach the peak of the third layer, and now he was going to take advantage of this opportunity to reach the fourth layer of tyrant body technique. This was the most important task right now. Only then he could really come out alive of this deadly domain. The heavenly calamity was further strengthening itself, as it did not want to let Yi Shiwen go alive. In fact, Yi Shiwen had to rely on phoenix regeneration to stop his body from disintegrating, but even that was failing to fully repair his injuries in time. Now, it seemed like his whole body was on superheated fire, trapped in a cycle of continuously disintegrating and restoring. At times, his body would go almost devoid of blood due to rapid vaporization, only surviving thanks to his rapid regeneration ability. He estimated that soon his bones would start to crumble. Yi Shiwen clenched his teeth as soon as he realized that he was on verge of reaching the fourth layer of tyrant body technique. He did know for how long he stayed inside the domain of heavenly calamity, but it was finally showing signs of disappearing. Immediately, numerous electric serpents sprouted once more from the clouds, and the very next moment, the billowing black clouds disappeared without a trace. These electric serpents merged together and transformed into a gigantic thunder dragon, roaring in the sky before suddenly rushing towards Yi Shiwen. Absorb this thunder dragon, then you can successfully reach the fourth layer of tyrant body technique in one fell swoop, Yi Mo said while looking at the magnificent figure of thunder dragon. Yi Shiwen knew that this thunder dragon was far stronger than all those electric serpents. Boom! The thunder dragon opened its gigantic mouth as if to devour Yi Shiwen, and a violent explosion occurred. A burst of lightning storm instantly collided with his body. Yi Shiwen felt as if his body would collapse in this terrible storm, ultimately turning into a pile of dust. All the while, tyrant body technique was working crazily and absorbing a massive amount of energy. Not to mention, The phoenix regeneration was also working at its max and reconstructing his body rapidly. Boom! Under this impact of a seemingly infinite amount of frantic energy, Yi Shiwen suddenly bulldozed through the barrier of the third layer and reached the fourth layer. It was like the collapse of a dam, allowing the flow of accumulated energy throughout his body. Tyrant Body Technique fourth layer. After reaching the fourth layer of Tyrant Body Technique, now he could simply disregard all attacks from the experts of half-step Legendary Realm or Legendary First Stage. In fact, even if he was to bump into a much higher level expert, he should still be able to make a great escape, and his enemies would find it difficult to injure him. Yi Shiwen noticed that the heavenly calamity had disappeared from the sky without a trace, and then suddenly, he saw the figure of a demon beast standing on the ground. It was a Firelin beast. Yi Shiwen recalled that he had seen a Firelin beast before, and this one looked similar to the previous one as well. But the difference was that this one was much larger and stronger than the previous one, simply a monster. However, he also noticed that there were several bruises and cut wounds all over its body. Its skin was burnt at multiple places along with some open flesh wounds, from where its blood was streaming down and staining the soil. Facing a heavenly tribulation was equally dangerous for demon beasts, like it was for human experts. Even if this Firelin beast had the blood of unicorn in its veins, dealing with heavenly tribulation was still a risky task. Not to mention, it had to deal with a raging heavenly calamity due to Yi Shiwen's intrusion. In fact, it almost came close to burning to crisp. Its red eyes were staring at Yi Shiwen. Its imposing aura was kind of unstable initially, but suddenly started to increase drastically, soon approaching the horrifying aura of the legendary realm before firmly locking onto Yi Shiwen. It was waiting for its strength to recover first before going after Yi Shiwen to kill him. Yi Shiwen suddenly sensed the imminent danger in his heart. Yi Shiwen, hurry up and kill that beast, don't let it recover. You have barely managed to escape unharmed from the heavenly calamity, but it is in its weakest state. Kill it and absorb its demon core, and that should help you in stepping into the half-step legendary realm. Yemo said. Chapter 295. Half-step legendary realm. Yi Shiwen could sense a somewhat keen killing intent in the eyes of Firelin Beast. Indeed, there were traces of hatred and greed in its eyes as well. It instinctively considered Yi Shiwen an enemy. Not to mention Yi Shiwen also sensed the presence of powerful divinities within its body, which could bring great benefits for him since he was in need of more and more divinities in order to strengthen his gilded tyrant form. He would usually come across demon beasts with small amounts of divinity within their bodies, but this Firelin beast was extraordinary in this regard. Yi Shiwen was still considering what to do next, but Firelin beast was obviously not going to give him any opportunity to continue to consider. It immediately roared and shot a large bundle of flames towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen immediately went back several steps to avoid the flame attack. The freshly obtained power of the legendary realm was evident in its attack. Just by spitting flames, it could easily burn through space. It was popular saying that it was necessary to face heavenly calamity, because the terrifying power of legendary realm lied on the other side of the test. Fuck. Yi Shiwen cursed out loud and no longer hesitated. After all, this beast was still injured and would soon be able to recover, and might even display full scope of legendary realm. He needed to win this battle as fast as possible. The long blade danced in his hands and released an enormous blade light that instantly split the entire sky into two halves as if attempting to shatter the void. Firelin Beast struggled to leap and barely managed to dodge Yi Shiwen's blade attack, however, not before getting its scales crushed by the blade light slicing through its waist, causing the blood to ooze out in abundance. Humph! Yi Shiwen snorted and immediately raised his hand, summoning a gigantic Han seal in the sky, and the very next moment he made it smash down. Like a huge mountain directly dropping from heavens, the Han seal pounded upon Firelin Beast without giving it any chance to escape. Bang! Great strength contained in this attack came close to crushing its bones. With its face upward, it roared loudly while its body emitted blazing white flames that instantly burned through the Han seal, making it possible for it to escape. But how could Yi Shiwen let it escape so easily? Another Han seal appeared in the sky and once again smashed down. Although it possessed the blood of the mythical unicorn, and thus had a strong regenerative capability as well, but the effectiveness of his regenerative ability was nowhere near that of Phoenix regeneration. Right now, Yi Shiwen was in his peak condition, whereas Fire Lin Beast had not even recovered from the injuries it sustained during the breakthrough. Yi Shiwen knew that in spite of having just entered the legendary realm, this beast was much more powerful than that old man. After all, it was a god's descendant with the divine power of ancient unicorn god in its blood. But Yi Shiwen was also aware of the fact that a certain period of time, after surviving a heavenly tribulation, was the most dangerous for a demon beast, increasing its chances of being hunted. Yi Shiwen certainly didn't get enough time to consider all this since he was fully focused on taking down this Fire Lin beast. Roar! The beast screamed pitifully after being severely hit by the Han seal. It staggered a bit as its blood spattered all over. Immediately, its ominous eyes began to stubbornly stare at Yi Shiwen. If it was in its peak condition, it would have already killed Yi Shiwen by now. But right now, it was basically cornered by a human expert of much lower level. The healing rate of its wounds, caused by the Han seal, was also very less. Fire Lin Beast was roaring again and again. It was not just furious but also regretting its decision of getting greedy and coveting the divinities within Yi Shiwen's body. In the end, its own greed sent him crashing into such a dreadful disaster. Yi Shiwen's facial expression appeared cold as he directly shot his palm and summoned an azure dragon from the depths of the abyss. At this moment, the tyrannical power of the fourth layer of Tyrant Body technique fully manifested itself, as he used his long blade to directly chop down the divinities contained within the white flame spat by the beast, while at the same time, his coiling dragon palm made an impact. Boom! Yi Shiwen's coiling dragon palm severely pounded on the beast's body. It screamed as its spine was broken into two halves, tearing its skin at that spot, from where scalding hot blood gushed out and stained the ground. It was a good opportunity. Yi Shiwen immediately released a massive sword intention that flew across the sky, crashed into its head, cracking open its skull while its brain matter splashed out. Fire Lin Beast was finally dead. Yi Shiwen took out a red demon core from its body. It was a special demon core of legendary realm, and was exuding waves of concentrated energy. After passing the heavenly tribulation, it had completely transformed into a demon core of legendary realm. Wonderful! Yi Shiwen, this is a good opportunity to absorb the demon core. I think then you can certainly set foot into the half-step legendary realm. Once you are in half-step legendary realm, that old fogey won't be your match anymore. Yemo said. Yi Shiwen nodded. If he could set foot in half-step legendary realm, then the experts of legendary realm wouldn't be a threat anymore. Just like the experts of half-step legendary realm were not his match right now. Yi Shiwen immediately found a cave in that area, and began closed-door cultivation. This entire area had been destroyed beyond recognition by the heavenly calamity, so concealment was a right decision since the event of heavenly calamity had scared off all demon beasts of that area. They were not daring to approach even if they wanted to. Yi Shiwen made no more delay, because he would also need to go back and confirm the safety of the wolf cub and Jian Wuchen. Although he did believe that they must have fled already, he would still want to go back and confirm. Not to mention he would also go greet the old man afterward. The red demon core was floating in front of Yi Shiwen, bobbing, and overflowing with energy based on fire element. Yi Shiwen was sitting cross-legged on the ground, with his eyes closed while Tianyuan mirror was constantly circling around above his head, protecting his entire body with a scarlet barrier. His body was exuding waves of golden light, while at the same time, large chunks of fire element were being absorbed into his body. Traces of red color appeared in the blanket of golden light enveloping his body. Although this Fire Lin beast had reached legendary realm just now, it must have been accumulating for years, or perhaps decades. Not to mention, it was a god's descendant with the divine fire element within its demon core. As soon as the fire element circulated within his body, it began to make a qualitative change in his Zhen Yuan that literally began to rampage inside his body. Yi Shiwen immediately mobilized this new type of Zhen Yuan in his meridians, and made it his own energy forcibly. Yi Shiwen could clearly feel a considerable change in his Zhenyuan. There was indeed a massive gap between Legendary Realm and realms beneath it. Legendary Realm is really something, Yi Shiwen said with a color of anticipation in his eyes. Once I am done completely absorbing this demon core, stepping into half-step Legendary Realm should be a piece of cake. Yi Shiwen continued to absorb the red-hot demon core, and sensed an influx of fire properties in his inner state. His face turned brighter and began to shine. Even traces of a mixture of golden and red light flashed in eyes. The powerful fire properties a legendary demon beast immediately started to impact heavily against the barrier to half-step Legendary Realm. Yi Ziwen's Zhenyuan saw a significant qualitative and quantitative transformation, and began to pound on the inner state barrier again and again. Only by breaking this barrier, he could leap from Truth Realm to half-step Legendary Realm. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Shiwen felt as if he was facing a thick iron wall standing between him and half-step Legendary Realm. This was a very firm threshold that was infamous for blocking countless experts from never stepping out of the Truth Realm. The newly gained Zhenyuan and its increased quantity were certainly helpful, but Yi Shiwen was still struggling to find a flaw in the barrier, while making impacts one after another. He did not know how many times it took, but he finally managed to break the barrier. Boom! The sturdy barrier finally started to collapse. Yi Ziwen's face suddenly lit up. I did it! My breakthrough was successful. With this, his imposing aura also changed completely. It gained small traces of the peculiar coercion of Legendary Realm, completely replacing the weak aura of Truth Realm. Uncontrolled waves of his imposing aura spread out in all directions, only to be blocked in the path by Tianyuan Mirror. Yi Ziwen's golden divine nature also appeared smoother than before. Also, after the breakthrough, he gained a godly aura that contained the magnificent divine coercion. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and said, "Finally, I reached half-step Legendary Realm. Now it's time to finish some unfinished business." Chapter 296. Conspicuous prestige. An unquenchable look of pleasant surprise appeared in Yi Ziwen's eyes. He had finally entered half-step Legendary Realm. The red-colored demon core had all its energy consumed and turned into a pile of dust. He never imagined of stepping into half-step Legendary Realm in such a short period of time. It took him not more than 6 months to achieve that, and this rate was not slow. One must know that reaching half-step Legendary Realm at the age of 20 was something not even the so-called peerless geniuses could do before the age of 50. Yi Shiwen was not necessarily the youngest, but definitely was one of the youngest to achieve such a feat. He just did not have the means to imagine his own progress. In terms of cultivation, once he would turn 50 years old. Even in his past life, a period of 20 years was not less and was tantamount to be a major part of one's lifespan. This time, his misfortune turned into a blessing at right time, and helped him obtain the demon core of a legendary demon beast, helping him reach the next realm in a short time. Yi Shiwen stretched his hand and the entire space was imprisoned in an instant. This was the ability of legendary experts. And having entered the half-step Legendary Realm, he had also come to understand a certain degree of space laws, at least enough to imprison a part of space for some time. Usually, this was possible only after becoming a full-fledged legendary expert and gaining access to freely communicate with the world laws, but Yi Shiwen was exposed to it in advance. Regarding the understanding of space, Yi Shiwen consciously took the initiative to gain hold of this power, and his control over space laws was certainly not inferior to an average legendary expert, because of the presence of mysterious space in his body. Not to mention, now Tianyuan Mirror could produce Lingdan unceasingly, and they would be constantly instilled into the bottomless pit of mysterious space. As a result of that, the mysterious space would continuously absorb Lingdan, and help Yi Shiwen in an unceasing deduction of some martial laws and techniques. In other words, a variety of world laws would be constantly deduced inside the mysterious space before being installed in Yi Shiwen mind. Of course, this process would go on non-stop. Therefore, although Yi Shiwen had not yet entered the Legendary Realm, he was still enjoying the powers and liberties of Legendary Realm with the help of mysterious space and Tianyuan Mirror. Of course, If the opponent was at legendary realm, then the space imprisonment wouldn't have any effect on them. Indeed, Yi Shiwen could still use it for self-protection as long as the opponent's skill wasn't too stronger than his own. Otherwise, his space imprisonment wouldn't work on the opponent. Not to mention, the opponent should also give up on the idea of imprisoning Yi Shiwen, because they would have to deal with his insanely fast speed. This was one of the greatest advantages in Yi Zaiwen's favor. During the breakthrough, his gilded tyrant form also gained no small advantage. Now his whole body was full of power, and he was confident that even a single punch could kill an expert of half-step legendary realm with ease. Yi Shiwen, you have made a big progress this time. Yi Mo said. Half-step legendary realm, although is only half a step into the legendary realm, it still enjoys the name and benefits of legendary realm. Remember, you are no longer in truth realm. You have left it behind. It should have taken 6 more months under normal circumstances to have this breakthrough. Yes, I never thought that persevering on the road to TMU can actually be good for cultivation. If things continue to go on like this for a year, you can reap tremendous benefits. It is time to find that old man and settle old scores. Yi Shiwen said. However, he did not have to go look for the old man because the people of Chiu clan were already looking for him. After the old man thought of going back, he still wasn't sure whether Yi Shiwen was really dead or not. What if Yi Shiwen was not dead and used some trick to fool him? Therefore, the old man ordered a legendary expert of Chiu clan to lead a team of experts and search for Yi Zaiwen's corpse. The team consisted of several truth-level experts, and all of them were using soul searches to find Yi Shiwen or his corpse. The old man was using his soul search technique to command the team of experts. Search everywhere, I want to see his corpse. Found him. Suddenly, a small team of experts shouted. Boom! With a sound of terrifying explosion. A blast wave swept off in all directions. The entire team, consisting of truth-level experts, was blasted away. Their bodies instantly turned into blood fog and dissipated in the atmosphere. A rainbow-colored flash of light streamed across the sky. I was planning to look for you. Never thought that an old idiot like you can also be so wicked. Yi Shiwen said in a calm voice. Yi Zaiwen's horrifying imposing aura spread in all directions. The old man sensed Yi Zaiwen's aura and his complexion turned pale. He never thought that Yi Zaiwen's aura would change so drastically. He could clearly feel traces of legendary power in Yi Zaiwen's aura. The old man was shocked by the fact that Yi Zaiwen's cultivation had progressed by leaps and bounds in such a short time. This level of insane progression speed was mind-blowing. The old man could tell that by having such an insane level of progression speed, Yi Zaiwen's future prospects would simply be incalculable, not to mention even the tremendous destructive power of heavenly tribulation was unable to kill him. Such a person must be eradicated as soon as possible, otherwise he would end up being a huge threat to Chiu clan. The only option was to strangle this genius in the cradle itself. Immediately, a bone-chilling killing intention flashed in the old man's eyes. Of course, Yi Shiwen didn't give a crap about all that. Little brat, do not dare think that I have forgotten what you did to our Chiu wolf. I did expect you to get killed by the heavenly tribulation, but it doesn't matter. I will kill you myself and take revenge. The old man said coldly. Only if you have the ability to do that. Yi Shiwen grinned. You bastard, I will kill you. A middle-aged expert of half-step legendary realm shouted, and flew towards Yi Shiwen. He was the father of Chiu Wolf, so his rage was understandable. After all his painstaking efforts in nurturing his son had been wasted by Yi Shiwen. The middle-aged man shot an enormous divine beam in the sky that instantly fell down towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen sneered, and instead of using any energy-based attacks, he directly went forward to greet the incoming divine beam. Boom! There occurred a massive explosion, but Yi Shiwen used just his palms to contain this explosion and rendered it ineffective. Bang! The very next moment, there echoed an extremely violent sound of breaking bones as Yi Shiwen used just his hands to crush that expert's bones into pieces. How is this possible? Everyone was shocked by the tyrannical display of physical strength by Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen did not give them enough time to figure out what just happened. He immediately summoned a Han seal in the sky and smashed it down towards that expert. Boom! The Han seal smashed down quickly at a lightning-fast speed, directly laminating that expert of half-step legendary realm onto the ground, turning him into blood fog almost instantly. Everyone looked in disbelief, swallowing their saliva and simply couldn't trust what they just saw. Could the killing of an expert of half-step legendary really be so easy? Yi Shiwen suddenly became an awe-inspiring man in the eyes of everyone. Impossible. The old man had an incredible look in his eyes as he stubbornly stared at Yi Shiwen. The unexpected rise in Yi Ziwen's strength was something out of his comprehension. He just couldn't understand how Yi Shiwen managed to become so powerful in such a short time. Step back, all of you, I will kill him. The old man roared, then immediately rushed forward and shot his palm, releasing the magnificent powers of legendary realm. A huge green hammer congealed out of nowhere and smashed towards Yi Shiwen. The space around Yi Shiwen was imprisoned suddenly, making it impossible for him to escape. Yi Shiwen sneered and his body released some kind of world law, instigating fluctuations in space around him, and making it possible for him to break free from space imprisonment. Yi Ziwen's joined his golden hands and blocked the hammer attack effortlessly. Old man, prepare yourself. You better embrace death with a smile on your face. Yi Shiwen smirked and launched a kick, sweeping rippling waves of golden light toward the old man. The old man was startled, actually did not expect that Yi Shiwen would be strong enough to disregard his offensives. Yi Shiwen not only broke out of his space confinement, he even blocked his legendary level hammer attack. Yi Shiwen summoned an azure coiling dragon from the depths of abyss. After reaching half-step legendary realm, even his coiling dragon attack had progressed by leaps and bounds. Huh. The old man thundered loudly and prepared himself to face Yi Ziwen's terrifying attack. The two sides collided fiercely as if mutually strangling each other. The crumbling and fluctuating energy waves spread out in all directions. This was a battle between two experts of legendary level. It seemed like a vicious fight between a wolf and a dragon. Yi Ziwen's golden aura soon occupied half of the sky, while the old man seemed to be struggling in a one-on-one fight with him. Today you go to hell. Yi Shiwen suddenly flew forward such as lightning while his hands transformed into dragon claws, and went forward to grasp the old man. This attack was so terrifying that the old man could only dodge and stay out of its range, but failed to do so. Boom! The old man screamed pitifully as his body was sent flying upside down. Chapter 297. Legend slaughtered. The old man was sent flying and directly hit the ground, pulling a long trace by being dragged on the ground before finally come to a stop. Yi Shiwen immediately chased him, and summoned a Han seal that instantly smashed down. Boom! Han seal directly pounded upon the old man, giving him no time to dodge. Bang! The old man had managed to steer out of the Han seal's main impact area, but was still hit at the edge, and was once again sent flying. There was no way to find out how many of his bones were crushed in the process. Stop! At this moment, several truth-level experts and an expert of half-step legendary realm of Chiu clan rushed forward to save the old man because they knew his importance for their family. They, as if, made a barrier of experts to protect the old man. As long as the old man would come out alive of this tragedy, the future of their clan would be secured. On the contrary, if the old man were to die, then their entire clan. They did not dare to imagine. Several truth-level experts rushed toward Yi Shiwen to pin him down, but he was radically unmoved. He continued to chase the old man. The golden divinities contained within his body were literally mocking humanity. An otherworldly golden energy burst out of Yi Ziwen's body and turned into a long blade. In a blink of an eye, several truth-level experts were chopped to pieces by this golden blade. Boom, boom, boom. Some experts were beheaded, some were split in half, and all in all, no one was able to stop the advance of Yi Ziwen's footsteps. You beast, no matter how big a price I must pay today, I will kill you. The half-step legendary experts roared. His palm transformed into a wolf claw and grasped toward Yi Shiwen. It was like the claw of the wolf god, attempting to squash Yi Shiwen, as if trying to trod the vault of heaven, and reshuffled the very existence of elements. I would like to see you try. Yi Shiwen smirked and shot an enormous golden beam to tackle the wolf claw. Stab. With a loud piercing sound, Yi Shiwen hands directly tore open the wolf claw. Aya! Yi Shiwen didn't stop there. The half-step legendary expert's body was then immediately caught by Yi Shiwen in midair, and was split into two halves, with blood splattering all around. Even his soul was directly torn apart by Yi Shiwen along with his body. This is what happens when a soul comes in the grasp of godly power. You bastard! The old man roared as she painstakingly saw yet another elite from his clan getting brutally killed by Yi Shiwen. He got so mad that he immediately rushed toward Yi Shiwen. The old man's whole body had started to swell with surging energy and boiling blood. The broken bones and torn muscles within his body started to reconnect at an astonishing rate. His imposing aura literally soared high into the sky, and the awe-inspiring changes in his body made him appear like a raging beast. Yi Shiwen, this is bad. I think he has gone suicidal and is planning to perish along with you. Yi Mo said in an anxious tone. Yi Mo's comment was not needed for Yi Shiwen to figure out what the old man was planning to do. After all, Yi Shiwen had killed Chiu Wolf and two other elites from the old man's clan, along with several truth-level experts. Not to mention, the massacre was still going on. The old man was forced to take desperate measures to save what was left of his clan. Suddenly, the old man thundered loudly. The whole sky began to boil as he congealed a bladiki in his hand and swept it across the sky. The surviving members of Chiu clan couldn't help but hold their breaths when they saw this scene. Clang! With the intermittent bursts of metal rubbing sound produced from friction between the bladiki and atmosphere. Die, you bastard! Bladiki arrived right in front of Yi Shiwen obliquely in a blink of an eye, and he could feel that it brought the entire space rolling along with it. Yi Shiwen immediately waved his right arm, congealing an equally terrifying bladiki along with a gigantic coiling dragon, and shot both these attacks toward the incoming bladiki attack. Boom! A loud explosion occurred, setting off a storm of rogue energy waves in all directions, violently twisting and shattering the space around. The members of Chiu clan immediately retreated far away from the place where that terrible collision occurred. They knew that getting in range of such a collision was like asking for death. Just die, die. The old man's facial expression became more ferocious, crazier. His eyes had turned red. Keeping a close eye on Yi Shiwen while congealing a bladiki much powerful and much purer than before, in his hands. This time, the bladiki contained a great roaring wolf made up of inexhaustible energy. The old man had combined two types of attacks into one to make the final attack much more destructive. The resulting attack appeared unusually brilliant and beautiful in the sky. The combined attack of bladiki and heavenly great wolf completely engulfed Yi Shiwen. Ha ha ha, little beast, now you will die without a doubt. The old man's facial expression turned grim as he laughed loudly like a madman. Get out of my way. Yi Shiwen shouted in a cold voice, and the entire barrier of energy enveloping Yi Shiwen instantly collapsed. A beam of golden light flushed out from the bladiki barrier, tearing it apart in the process and further crashed into the great wolf's body, annihilating it almost instantly. Impossible. The old man couldn't believe his eyes, because he was absolutely sure that his most powerful attack would kill Yi Shiwen. Not to mention he had unlocked his full potential, and was at his peak condition while launching this attack. He certainly didn't know that Yi Shiwen had a trick to restore himself to the peak condition in a blink of an eye. The old man panicked and immediately flew back far away, but not faster than the golden beam shot by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had immediately released a golden blade attack, but this time made up of a mixture of divinities and dragon chi. The hybrid energy was insanely destructive, powerful enough to shock the entire world. The old man quickly congealed a series of defensive arrangement, made up of Zhen Yuan, in front of himself. However, a barrier made up of mere Zhen Yuan couldn't stop Yi Shiwen's attack that easily shattered the barrier. Bang! 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 As soon as the Zhen Yuan barrier was shattered, the old man immediately went several steps back to evade the bladiki attack, but failed to do so in time. Poochie! His right arm was severed, spattering bone dust and mincemeat debris in all directions. The old man's body wasn't able to avoid the heavy impact contained in the attack, and was severely knocked to the ground, creating a large humanoid hole in the ground. Han seal. Yi Shiwen immediately summoned the Han seal that appeared in the form of a huge mountain falling from the sky. The old man wanted to resist but lacked enough speed and agility to dodge the Hans Seal's impact. In a flash, he was crushed to dead by Hans Seal. Even his soul didn't survive this impact and dissipated. The remaining experts of Chiu clan immediately understood that getting out of there was the only option left in front of them. In their eyes, Yixuan appeared just like a devil god that had effortlessly and mercilessly killed all the powerhouses of their clan. But before they could flee, the entire surrounding space was imprisoned, freezing them in midair. Yixuan used Missing Moon Beheader technique and unleashed 1,000 blades, chopping all of them into pieces. It just took Yixuan an instant to wipe out the entire clan. Although Yixuan was not yet a full-fledged legendary expert, he had already learned to exploit some of its benefits. His understanding of space imprisonment technique was not at all inferior to that of other legendary experts. Yixuan, I must say that your current strength is comparable to that of an expert of half-step legendary first stage. Only a few peerless geniuses are able to reach the first stage of half-step legendary realm. Yemo said. This is not enough. Yixuan said. I want to beat all the opponents and become the strongest. Only after becoming the strongest, he would have the opportunity to make contact with the outside world. Then only it would be possible to one day return to the earth. Yixuan, without any delay, directly expanded his devil wings and flew toward Shunan City in order to find the whereabouts of the wolf cub and Jian Wuchen. He went back and found out that those two had already fled away. Yixuan felt relieved, though he did not know where they were headed. However, considering the power and disposition of Wolf Cub and Jian Wuchen, they must have safely escaped from Shunan Prefecture. Yixuan also believed that he would not be getting any news about them anytime soon. Chapter 298. Overbearing army of God. Yixuan was following the road to Tianmu, the same road that had been used by generations of geniuses for thousands of years. Although Yixuan had the choice of flying, he preferred to walk in order to learn more about Ming Empire and its culture. Not to mention his walk was equally fast. In just a month on his journey, he experienced local customs and social traditions, which was a lot better than reading 10,000 books on Ming Empire. During this month, Yixuan learned a lot about Ming Empire. Since he was not struggling to catch up, he had basically fallen behind Jian Wuchen and the wolf cub. However, he often heard news about the exploits of the two on the way. He recently heard news about the wolf cub having stepped into half-step legendary realm, and had torn apart a young elite of Ming Empire, who was also at half-step legendary realm, but still didn't stand a chance against the wolf cub's tyrannical powers. Although Yixuan hadn't personally seen wolf cub in action, judging from the information received, he could tell that they must have tried to belittle him by making fun of his skills, ultimately making him go berserk and massacre all the way. After surviving a life-and-death battle with the assassin, Jian Wuchen benefited a lot and managed to step into half-step legendary realm. His progression speed was indeed very fast as Yixuan had predicted. This month, Yixuan constantly consolidated his inner state, reaching all the way to the pinnacle of half-step legendary realm. Of course, his acquired knowledge and sensibility had already gone far beyond half-step legendary realm, thanks to the energy and knowledge accumulated in the library. Also, now Tianyuan Mirror was producing a lot of Ling Dawn every day, half getting instilled into mysterious space to comprehend various martial techniques and world laws, while the remaining half getting absorbed by Yixuan. In just 1 month, Yixuan had completely consolidated his inner state to its peak level. Yixuan arrived before a vast mountain range. According to the ancient road map, he found out that there stood a big city on the other side of this mountain range. There were several routes that could be taken to go to Tianmu, each having a dedicated map. So each time Tianmu opened its gate to recruit disciples, some people, who knew the routes, would start selling maps to the contestants. Of course, some routes were riddled with dangers while some were relatively easy to traverse. Hence, the costs of these maps varied accordingly. Yixuan didn't care about their prices or difficulty to traverse and bought the one that was most detailed. Clang. A metal clanging sound resounded in the forest, followed by sudden dispersion of clouds in the sky. Boom. A sword key suddenly flew across the sky and came very close to hitting almost grazing Yi Zaiwen's side. The dense forest was also split in half by the terrifying sword ki. Yi Shiwen saw the figures of two persons dashing away from the source of sword ki attack. One of them was a man who appeared in his late 20s, was dressed in black clothes and had a handsome face, but there was a huge wound in his chest. One could even vaguely see the broken ribs, indicating that the injury was quite serious. At his side, there was a beautiful woman who appeared to be in her early 20s, had a blinding black hair. At this time, she was experiencing shortness of breath. Her complexion was red but did not have any visible injuries. Mo Yan and Mo Xiang, you two siblings better hand over the sword command, otherwise you won't escape death today. About a dozen warriors, each one at complete truth realm and clad in strange uniforms, were standing behind those siblings. This group was being led by an expert of half-step legendary realm. He was a tall and sturdy man, and was holding a long sword in hand. God's army is at work, a loitering passerby like you should mind your own business. Now get lost. The half-step legendary warrior glanced at Yi Shiwen, and said. Yi Shiwen was not planning to interfere in the first place. However, the leader of God's army suddenly waved his sword and shot a sword ki toward Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen dodged to the side and effortlessly evaded this attack. He looked at the siblings and saw fear in their eyes, as if they wanted someone to help them but wouldn't ask because they didn't want him to get involved in this mess. Those who interfere in the matters of God's army shall die, the leader coldly said. Without any hesitation, he once again shot a bright sword ki toward Yi Shiwen. Humph, your arrogance is praiseworthy, Yi Shiwen said, then directly grabbed the sword ki and crushed it. On the way to TMU he had learned a lot of things, of course, God's army being one of the things that caught his attention. Army of God was an organization quite well known in this area with the idea of representing the so-called Army of God itself. It was established by 5 formidable young experts who referred to themselves as 5 gods. They gathered a large number of followers by defeating numerous strong and well-known geniuses from all over, and then compelled them to join their army, just like the 8th prince used to operate in Great U State. However, the 8th prince wasn't as powerful as the 5 gods. How dare you stand in our way, you are courting death. An expert of complete truth realm instantly appeared in front of Yi Shiwen and blasted a punch, distorting the space itself with a burst of colossal power. It could be said that even an ordinary member of God's army was much more powerful than average experts of complete truth realm. You messed up. Yi Shiwen smirked and Zhen Yuan instantly began to surge out of his body and enveloped him completely. Poof! Yi Shiwen shoved his hands into his chest and tore him apart. Are you going to pick a fight with the army of God? You have a death wish. The leader stared coldly at Yi Shiwen. His complexion wasn't good because he could tell that Yi Shiwen was very strong. He did not dare to underestimate Yi Shiwen. Army of God is already dead in my eyes. Yi Shiwen replied in a calm voice. And you and your subordinates are the ones that started this. Yi Zaiwen's reply immediately angered the leader. The God's army was like a supreme existence in his heart, and allowing others to belittle it was nothing less than blasphemy. Boom! He pounded his foot on the ground, and like a flash of lightning, he rushed toward Yi Shiwen while unleashing a rolling sword ki at him. Yi Shiwen took out his long blade and chopped toward the enemy, releasing a golden bladiki that instantly transformed into a roaring golden dragon. Boom! Along with a dreadful loud metal clanging sound, enormous waves of energy were set off in all directions. The leader was instantly gobbled by the golden dragon, tearing him to shreds. Even his soul was not spared in the process. The brother and sister were looking at Yi Shiwen with utter disbelief in their eyes. Although this leader was at half-step legendary realm, he was powerful enough to contend with an expert of legendary first stage. However, he was so effortlessly killed by Yi Shiwen. Of course, they knew that the army of God only recruited top geniuses from the younger generation. So a team leader was certainly going to be elite among elites. Not to mention, he was at half-step legendary realm, and was directly under the command of the 5 gods, but was still killed in a blink of an eye by just a blade attack. All in all, Yi Shiwen was insanely strong. Scram! Yi Shiwen shouted. The members of God's army were stubbornly staring at Yi Shiwen, and did not dare to approach him. They had already realized that Yi Shiwen was far stronger than them, perhaps on the same level as their 5 gods. Yi Shiwen did not mean to exterminate them. After all, these were just prisoners in the army of gods. Yi Shiwen had heard a lot of things about the tyrannical presence of the 5 gods. It was said that only few could rival their strength in the younger generation. Although everyone wanted to be the strongest in the younger generation of southern region, it was rare for someone to be daring enough to claim such a bold thing. Although there were many legends about the 5 gods, no one actually knew about their specific strength levels. However, there were rumors that the first god was at half-step legendary 3rd or 4th stage, and has an awe-inspiring military experience of 50 years as a warrior commander. It was said that had not set foot on the road to TMU because when the representatives of TMU evaluated his qualifications, they decided to have him as a disciple, but he refused. He chose to embark on this road with the rhetoric that he would beat all the geniuses of the younger generation and become the first person to enter TMU via assessment. Even if the other 4 gods were weaker than him, they were still powerful enough to stand above an expert of half-step legendary realm, who was just now killed by Yi Shiwen. However, now that Yi Shiwen had offended them already, he would rather go all the way and beat them one by one. He was striving to be at the top and would need to defeat all his rivals sooner or later. At this time, Mo Yen and Mo Xiang arrived next to Yi Shiwen and said, "Kind brother, thanks for saving us siblings. We will always be grateful to you for this." Chapter 299 Dragon Essence. Yi Shiwen turned around to face the 2 siblings. The young male Mo Yen said, "I am Mo Yen, this is my little sister Mo Xiang. We are deeply grateful to you for saving our lives." It was no big deal. Yi Shiwen certainly would not say that he wasn't planning to interfere in the beginning, but had to when the members of God's army attacked him for no reason. "I am probably taking the liberty to ask you, but why are the members of God's army after you too?" Yi Shiwen asked. "You don't know what's going on?" Mo Yen looked strangely at Yi Shiwen and asked. "I just came here, so do not know much." Yi Shiwen replied. "I see." Mo Yen nodded then said, "It is not a big surprise that there is a big city located behind this mountain range. It is called Wing City and was originally a huge martial school with its own small world, which is rumored to have been concealing a lot of heavenly treasures. And there is this one kind of treasures that can help an expert from directly jumping from half-step legendary realm to the legendary realm. It's called Dragon Essence." Dragon Essence? Yi Shiwen was suddenly startled because he also knew about Dragon Essence being the legacy left behind after the death of Dragon Arteries. The so-called Dragon Arteries were a kind of spiritual arteries but were considered top-level among spiritual pulses. They not only contained adequate link but also brought strong destiny. An ordinary spiritual artery allowed the survival of an entire school and its prosperity, but a Dragon Artery did it several times better by granting a significant rise in cultivation by providing rich lingqi for cultivation. And most importantly, also granted strong destiny to the school built around it. If a small school could obtain a formidable Dragon Artery, it could help them in becoming great, not to mention the destiny of the school would be stronger as well. However, anything that lives in this world dies eventually. Everything that starts has an inevitable end. In this case, the death of a Dragon Artery leads to the birth of Dragon Essence. Although Dragon Essence is just the leftover of Dragon Arteries, it is definitely a high-tier heavenly treasure, and is precious enough to make experts of half-step legendary realm directly make a leap to legendary realm. Of course, the benefits are not just this much. It can cleanse the human bone marrow, turning it into spirit bones and giving an enormous advantage to the practitioner. Not to mention, if a cultivator use Dragon Essence to cultivation, they can absorb its underlying destiny and enhance his own by leaps and bounds. Now one could imagine the preciousness of Dragon Essence. In fact, even a major force like Yuan School won't give a Dragon Essence to its disciples because Yuan School is built over just a single mesh of Dragon Arteries, and if and when it dies, Yuan School will not be far from decline. And when the complete deterioration takes place, there will be a possibility of a Dragon Essence emerging as its legacy. And you have to be a super faction to have the possibility of leaving behind dragon essence after deterioration, because when dragon arteries die, the overall structural mesh of arteries shrink crazily and most small dragon arteries would just disappear without a trace, leaving nothing behind. Only a few super dragon arteries of gigantic size and potential have a possibility of leaving behind dragon essence as the legacy. And once it happens, it causes countless experts to compete over its legacy. Yes, the dragon essence is going to be born soon, but in order to enter the small world where it is going to appear, one needs a sword command. There are a total of 8 sword commands, and only when all of them in a place, the gate to the small martial world can be opened. Mo Yen said, and I happen to have one such sword command, so the army of God chased me down to kill me and my sister, and snatch it from us. Now we are willing to offer this sword to you, big brother. Would you be willing to have it? Mo Yen said and handed over a double-edged small sword to Yi Shiwen. There were delicate-looking patterns on the sword, and it was hard to tell what material it was made up of. However, it was exuding a strange glow. You do not want it? Yi Shiwen asked. Even without this sword, people can go in when the gate to the small world opens. But a humble expert like me has such a precious sword. It is bound to invoke jealousy among men, and me and my sister may not be able to survive another siege. Mo Yen openly said, after all, he couldn't hide the fact that he was just an expert of complete truth realm, and was competing with many formidable experts. So it was better for the sword to stay with a powerful deterrent like Yi Shiwen. In fact, a while ago he was very close to handing over the sword command to the army of God in order to survive. After all, even if he and his sister had managed to escape, the news about them having a sword command would have leaked anyway. He naturally understood that staying away from a sword command was the only way to stay out of trouble. As long as you allow us siblings to follow you into the small martial world, we will be satisfied. Mo Yen explained. Such being the case, I would not refuse. Yi Shiwen said and took the sword command. He certainly wouldn't mind having a key to a treasure trove. After all, taking the initiative would still be in his command. He could either choose to be active or passive about it. Now that he had decided to compete for dragon essence, he wouldn't be hesitant about being proactive. Mo Yen and Mo Xiang rested for some time, then all of them crossed the mountain and arrived at Wing City. This city was much larger than Shunan, and was considered among one of the 50 great cities of Ming Empire. The giant city had erected towering walls and magnificent buildings, enough to make it no less grand than an imperial city. They entered the city, found an inn, and after settling in, they went to a restaurant. In the restaurant, they heard people talking about martial art relic everywhere. One must know that this martial art vestige was much more precious than the 4 sacred beasts' secret technique of the 8th prince. Gee, the news about martial vestige has attracted many experts to our city. Yes, it is dragon essence after all. The experts who want to step into legendary realm are naturally attracted to it. In fact, even experts who are already in legendary realm can level up with the help of dragon essence. The top players of the younger generation are going to compete for it. You are talking about the army of God, aren't you? I hear that its members have been searching for sword commands everywhere. Also, the 5th god has personally come into action to obtain the dragon essence. I think they are too arrogant. Even if the 5 gods are strong experts, they shouldn't underestimate other top experts of the younger generation. True, a lot of the members of God's army were killed by formidable experts. That is why the 5th god had to personally step in to collect the sword commands. Army of God is really an unusual organization with 5 gods, each ranked according to their strength level. But even the 5th god, the lowest ranked god and youngest among all, is at the peak of half-step legendary realm. 2 days ago he killed a veteran of legendary realm. This is simply insane. Hey, but did you not hear that there is a monster wolf that had a verbal fight with him? Hey, I have heard about a notorious wolf or some kind of dog. Its reputation has spread far and wide in this region, but I did not expect it to mess with God's army as well. A day before yesterday, the 5th god blocked its path and tried to tame it, but it used some kind of insanely fast agility technique. Even the 5th was unable to catch it, even if he is actually at legendary 1st stage. Yi Shiwen immediately thought, Is it not the wolf cub they are talking about? Army of God is really out of luck. They do not know that they have messed with the wrong beast and their destruction is evident. Yi Shiwen looked happy. Mo Yen and Mo Xiang saw him suddenly turn happy, and did not know what happened to liven up his mood. Then suddenly the atmosphere in the entire restaurant got tense. Humph, you wimps dare to discuss the army of God and look down on us. It seems you do not want to live anymore. At this time, a few experts got up from their chairs. One could see Army of God embroidered on their uniforms. Immediately, there was a pin-drop silence in the restaurant. Now no one dared to speak a word as they did not dare to face the overbearing dominance of the Army of God. Annoying the Army of God was no different than being suicidal. A group of insignificant and talkative idiots think that they are capable enough to judge us? Army of God is an absolute entity. Those who will try to speak or act against us shall perish. A member of the Army of God said and glanced at the crowd with a cold look in his eyes. This was the typical way of how the Army of God operated in this city. Not to mention no one dared to challenge them. Everybody listen up. The monster wolf has appeared outside the city and all our brother of God's army have gone out to catch it. Suddenly, a voice sounded and informed everyone about the appearance of the wolf cub. Well, that monster wolf is really courting death. Let's go. The members immediately turned into streamers of light and flew outside the city. Yi Shiwen sneered and shook his head. These members of the Army of God were nothing but truth-level experts, whereas the wolf cub was already at half-step legendary realm. They were going toward their own doom. Chapter 300. The fifth god appears at this time. The well-uniformed members of God's army were flying all over the city. Yi Shiwen finally got up and set out of the restaurant. Although he was finally going to meet the wolf cub, he was not in a rush and appeared to be going at his own pace. He was not willing to interfere because he knew that there was no need to do so in the first place. Brother Yi, are you going to take a look? Mo Yin looked at Yi Shiwen and said. Yi Shiwen had killed a half-step legendary member of the Army of God, and there was a possibility that he was on their hit list now, even if he had killed all the witnesses. However, it was the best for them to stay away from the Army of God. Yes, I am going to meet a good friend of mine. You two can wait here. Yi Shiwen said. No, please let us come with you. Mo Yin secretly clenched his teeth and said. Yi Shiwen smiled. Thought that Mo Yin was quite courageous. Even after knowing the possibility of bumping into the fifth god, he still dared to go with Yi Shiwen. Perhaps, Mo Yin was worried about the treasure that was now in Yi Ziwen's possession. The three of them flew out of the city along with several streamers of lights. The sky above the city was filled with figures of experts flying at incredible speeds. Yi Shiwen and the other two soon arrived at an open field that was encircled by a large group of experts, mostly the members of the Army of God. A large number of experts were floating in the sky and watching from the sidelines. Damn you, dog demon, you will die today. A skinny member of God's army said while staring at the wolf cub who was standing in the center of the field. Yi Shiwen noticed that the wolf cub had grown up significantly, almost reaching up to his chest, and contrary to the rumors, his strength level was already rivaling that of legendary experts. Fuck you. You are a dog. Your entire family is the lowest breed of dogs. The wolf cub suddenly shouted with anger boiling in his eyes. The onlookers immediately started to laugh aloud, thinking that this wolf demon beast was definitely stupid. You are all talk but no action. The only thing you are good at is running away, but today, you can forget that as well. I will first skin you, then pull out your muscles and crush your bones. The skinny expert said in a provocative tone. You think this prince will escape? I'm right here, show me what you got. The wolf cub smiled and proudly said. He did not seem afraid of being surrounded by so many experts because his agility skill was very mysterious. In fact, without relying on the speed boost from the devil wings, even Yi Shiwen wouldn't be able to catch up with the wolf cub's speed. Even the so-called fifth god was unable to catch him. Everybody, today we will butcher this dog and eat a pot full of dog meat curry. Begin, said the skinny expert, and immediately, dozens of members of God's army sprang toward the wolf cub. Boom! The wolf cub opened its mouth wide and spat out a rotating divine beam that rushed forward as if piercing the expansive sky, sweeping away everything in its way. Puff! 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 Several members of the army of God were directly vaporized by the divine beam, not giving them any chance to approach the wolf cub. Shitty demon beast, die already! The skinny expert blasted a punch, unleashing a burst of surging Zhen Yuan towards the wolf cub. Humph! Heavenly wolf howling moon! The wolf cub snorted, then muttered something, after which he turned his face upward toward the sky and howled. His whole body was enveloped in an ominous aura, as the moon instantly started to change color. The sky was dark a moment ago, but a perfectly round bright moon rose up in the sky, showering beautiful yet ominous moonlight everywhere. Under the illumination of moonlight, the wolf cub galloped forward. The earth began to vibrate vigorously, and in a blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the skinny expert, opened his mouth and swallowed the Zhen Yuan attack at point-blank range. Then immediately stretched his claws and grabbed that skinny expert. Poochie! The skinny expert was instantly torn into two parts, his blood splattering everywhere, bone chips flying off in the air. An expert of half-step legendary realm had been directly torn apart. The skinny expert died on the spot, shocking many experts who were watching this scene. The wolf cub glanced at the skinny expert's corpse that was now in two parts, and said in his usual foul-mouthed manner, "Now go cook a pot of your bitch sister's meat in hell, you shitty dog." Everyone was terrified by this scene. After all, an expert of half-step legendary realm was brutally butchered in front of their eyes, without even getting a chance to fight back. This wolf was really a monster. One must know that on this road, the experts of half-step legendary realm were considered extremely extraordinary figures, powerful enough to run amok in any city of this region. Not to mention, the army of God was famous for having strict recruitment process with very harsh standards, with no scope of non-elites becoming a member. All members of the God's army were considered pure elites. An expert of half-step legendary realm was definitely an outstanding character, but still failed to last even a moment in front of the wolf monster. This wolf monster was formidable to what extent? Was it already an expert of half-step legendary first stage? This wolf demon beast is a monster. Damn, look at its strength level. It can easily contend with the top players of the younger generation. Yes, but I don't know, maybe the fifth god will personally move into action. It would be a lot of fun to watch a battle between them. Catch him! A member of the army of God suddenly shouted frantically. Several experts of half-step legendary realm rushed toward the wolf cub at once. This organization of army of God was indeed one of the best organized groups known to Yi Shiwen. There were actually only a few good half-step legendary experts in the group, but each had unimaginable cultivation depth. Yi Shiwen hadn't come across any other organization so well-trained and well-structured. As a fellow expert, he truly felt respect for the founder of the army of God. Humph! An expert of half-step legendary realm suddenly punched toward the wolf cub, smashing the space into multiple pieces in the process. The wolf cub suddenly jumped upward and turned into a streamer of light, avoiding the encirclement entirely. The members simply had no way to catch him. On the contrary, he started killing the members one after another. Many onlookers were secretly surprised. The wolf cub's agility skill was not ordinary. No wonder he went as far as picking a fight with an entire team of God army. So it seemed like the rumor about the fifth god failing to catch him was not fake. Hey, you idiots are too slow, just like turtles. The wolf cub made no concessions while ridiculing them. Yi Shiwen looked at the wolf cub and noticed that there had been a tremendous change in his agility skill and overall speed. He could tell that these experts were not fast enough to catch up with the wolf cub. In fact, he himself would need to use his devil wings to match the wolf cub's speed. Humph! At this time, a loud voice resounded in the sky and a big hand stretched down from above, turned into an insanely sturdy cage and tried to trap the wolf cub. Damn it, a surprise attack! The wolf cub suddenly cursed and immediately flew several dozen feet away. He successfully went out of the range of that cage. Boom! The cage crashed into the ground and created a huge crater. Although the wolf cub escaped, the enemy was obviously not ready to give up. Another cage fell down from high altitude, right upon the wolf cub. Boom! 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 With a loud roar, cages fell down to the ground one after another. "Fifth god, you bastard, you shouldn't have appeared in front of me." The wolf cub yelled but did not have the means to maintain a cool look on his face. On the contrary, he was in complete distress right now. "Fifth god? Fifth god has arrived. Where is he? Are you telling me the fifth god has arrived at Yangon City? This monster wolf is so dead now. I heard that the fifth god has taken a fancy to this wolf demon and wants to have it as a pet, but did not expect that it would be so formidable. He had to face a lot of trouble and still wasn't able to tame it. I think the fifth god is going to slaughter this wolf monster." The fifth god's popularity was simply off the charts. Being the lowest-ranked god, he was approachable and was similar to a role model for all junior members of the organization who looked up to him and wanted to be like him. A stalwart figure came out from the void. His facial features made him appear quite domineering, with his black hair fluttering in the wind. The golden robe was really complementing his tall stature, as he was overlooking the world like a real god from ancient times. This was the infamous expert of the god's army, the fifth god. "I hope you are prepared to die, little one?" The fifth god looked at the wolf cub with an ice-cold look flashing in his eyes. "You are courting death," the wolf cub roared. "Who do you think you are, eh? You are no god. Your title is nothing but shit. I have seen much stronger individuals than you, and even they do not dare to claim to be some god. You better not bite off more than you can chew." Humph. The fifth god did not say anything, just stretched out his big hand that got bigger and bigger, while going toward the wolf cub. Chapter 301. Hand-to-hand fight. A big hand instantly shrouded the sky, and went toward the wolf cub to grab him. "Yi Shiwen, just act already. What are you waiting for?" The wolf cub hastily called out. He had spotted Yi Shiwen in the crowd long time ago. Yi Shiwen smiled and thought, "This wolf cub is really very smart and astute." Of course, he wouldn't keep the wolf cub waiting any longer, and instantly moved into action. His killing intention immediately flashed and spread out in all directions, instantly blotting out the sky and overwhelming the fifth god's aura. Who is this man daring to challenge the fifth god? This question cropped up in everyone's hearts as they just couldn't dare to believe that someone would dare to challenge the fifth god. After all, they would never dare to stand in the way of the fifth god? The reason was simple. Going against the fifth god meant instant death. Boom. The golden divine nature of Yi Shiwen was just like a golden tide that blotted out the sky and swept across in all directions. The fifth god's big hand happened to be in the way of this destructive golden tide, and was directly annihilated, turning into Lingqi before dissipating into thin air. Everyone saw a blue figure floating above the golden tide, and overlooking the fifth god. Yi Ziwen's cold eyes were staring at the fifth god. The wolf cub was sitting cross-legged beside him in midair. Yi Shiwen had painted the world golden within moments. Now the surrounding area looking like a portrait made up of gold, like a true masterpiece painted by God himself. "Who are you? How dare you stand in the way of the army of God?" The fifth god stared back at Yi Shiwen and said in a loud voice, "Army of God, you say? Never heard of it. Am I supposed to care?" Yi Shiwen replied with a smile. "God. Are you trying to tell this year's funniest joke or something?" Yi Shiwen said and burst into laughter. At this time, the onlookers faintly recognized the hidden meaning of his words. Claiming to be God was overly rampant. Those daring to use the name of God according to their convenience were definitely too arrogant to reason with, but the truth was undeniable that this organization was very strong, and on this route, no one dared to act against the army of God. Even the wolf cub came almost close to getting captured by them. When facing just one was so dangerous, there were 5 of them in total. "Are you suicidal?" The fifth god replied without losing his cool as intended by Yi Shiwen. Seeing the wolf cub arrive beside Yi Shiwen was certainly making his furious. "Yi Shiwen, you have to be careful, he is very strong," the wolf cub said. Even if he had this insanely insolent personality, he still was honest and said that the fifth god was very strong. Right now he was recovering and knew well that he was not an opponent of the fifth god. The wolf cub didn't need to state the obvious because Yi Shiwen could tell the same from the fifth god's imposing aura that was cutting through the sea of his golden energy like sharp blades and rushing toward him. Boom! Yi Ziwen's clothes were fluttering under the terrifying coercion blowing from the other side. For an average expert of half-step legendary realm, staying in the way of such a dreadful pressure could literally run them over and crush them to death. Yi Shiwen emitted golden divinities from his body and instantly neutralized the dreadful pressure. The spectators who were watching this scene suddenly held their breaths, and then immediately retreated far away. They did not want to stay in the range while a collision between the two dreadful imposing auras was taking place. After witnessing Yi Ziwen's strength firsthand, even the fifth god's face revealed a dignified expression. He could already tell that Yi Shiwen was going to be a very strong opponent. Aren't you known as God? What happened? Use your godly powers and try again, loser. After having the support of Yi Shiwen, the wolf cub started to clamor immediately. The fifth god's cold eyes stared at Yi Shiwen and the wolf cub and he instantly rushed forward, cutting right through the golden tide. A long halberd appeared in his hands. This was the first time he was resorting to using a weapon against an opponent. In fact, even while contending with an old expert over a sword command few days ago, he did not need to use a weapon. However, while facing Yi Shiwen, he had to resort to using his halberd that had a mysterious glowing pattern carved in it. Although no one knows who the fifth god really is, it can be said that he is among the top players of the younger generation. That is why he managed to obtain the title of fifth god. Many older experts of half-step legendary first stage have tried to snatch this title from him, but couldn't even force him to use his weapon. Yes, the halberd you see in his hands is rumored to be a weapon of God, and is said to have infinite might. A weapon used by the god? This is definitely impossible because nobody knows whether there is God in this world or not. We just read about gods in our extraordinary history, that's all. The halberd shot instantly like a sharp blade with unparalleled speed, and made a path by cutting the space in half, just like a picture scroll being torn into two pieces. Such a stunning attack released boundless coercion in all directions, forcing the spectators to further retreat and move out of the range. Otherwise, they would have to face the risk of getting chopped to pieces. Yi Ziwen's body was instantly covered with golden divinities as he gave a loud shout and directly rushed forward, trampling the space on the way and blasted a punch toward the halberd. Boom! There sounded a terrifying metal clanging noise along with a massive explosion that set off waves of rogue energy in all directions, ravishing anything in its way. Yi Shiwen stood uninjured with only a trace of white scratch on his golden fist that healed almost instantly. Yi Shiwen was in high spirits as his battling intention was soaring constantly. After stepping into the half-step legendary realm, he finally met a worthy opponent to test the limits of his own strength. Extremely arrogant. Fifth god exclaimed with a cold facial expression painted on his face. He waved his halberd once and suddenly unleashed an enormous burst of condensed energy toward Yi Shiwen with a boom. Yi Shiwen was no longer polite and instantly rushed past the incoming attack, while simultaneously unleashing a sea of golden divinities toward his opponent. Boom! The two sides collided in the sky and led to an enormous collision that set off tremendous blast waves everywhere, which mutually submerged the two in the process. The two golden figures instantly collided once again. Yi Ziwen's monstrous palm attack pressed down like a mountain, and instantly crashed into the fifth god's equally massive mountainous palm attack. The two mountains severely collided and crumbled into an enormous ocean of energy. Boom! The two figures detached from each other, and a stream of blood splashed out from the wound that was torn open in Yi Ziwen's palm by the fifth god's halberd. Yi Shiwen did not say anything, just looked at the fifth god with an ice-cold expression on his face. The phoenix regeneration instantly repaired his wound while he thought in his heart that this halberd was really no ordinary weapon. He had already practiced Gilded Tyrant form to the 4th layer, and even an expert of half-step legendary first stage should find it very difficult to injure his gilded body. Yi Shiwen never thought that his gilded body would actually be injured. In fact, if it was an ordinary expert in place of him, they would have been split in half already. Yi Shiwen did not know that the fifth god was even more surprised. He rarely resorted to using his halberd, but when he did, it brought instant death to his opponents. But this time, His halberd managed to pull out a minor wound on his opponent's palm. This was already beyond his imagination. Fifth God's complexion was pale as he glanced at Yi Shiwen, seemed to consider something, then said, "Next time, I will take your life." After that, the fifth god left with his forces while the spectators continued to watch this scene in bewilderment. They just couldn't understand why would the fifth god just leave like that? Could it be that he was actually afraid of Yi Shiwen? This was not right, after all. Everyone watched the battle from beginning, and it never seemed like the fifth god was falling under the wind. Both of them appeared equally matched, and Yi Shiwen was even injured a bit. Such being the case, how could the fifth god miss this opportunity to teach Yi Shiwen a lesson? Nobody knew what the fifth god was thinking. They had no precise answer. Yi Shiwen did not stop the departure of the fifth god because the small world had not yet opened, so a death match with the fifth god wouldn't be worthwhile anyway. Moreover, during the confrontation, Yi Shiwen truly never had a clear upper hand. If the fifth god had not retreated, it would inevitably be an enduring battle. Chapter 302, Sword Command Ownership. How did you mess with this guy? After the fifth god left, Yi Shiwen and the others no longer stayed behind, and went back to the city. The wolf cub also followed Yi Shiwen and settled in the inn along with him. "Don't talk about that bastard. He tried to tame me and turn me into his pet," the wolf cub said in his usual foul-mouthed language. A proud wolf like him was bound to be angry, after all, even if Yi Shiwen had caught him on the Demon Island, but never treated him like a pet. The wolf cub was treated as a partner by Yi Shiwen, but the fifth god wanted him to surrender. This was simply impossible. When the wolf cub had fought with the fifth god for the first time, he had been at a disadvantage that time, and the struggling battle helped him in setting foot into the half-step legendary realm, but still came close to getting captured by the fifth god. He was seriously injured as well. However, the wolf cub was not the type who wouldn't fight back after suffering a loss. He continued to mess with the army of God on multiple occasions. He even had a fierce battle with an elite expert of half-step legendary realm, because the expert wanted to grab him and force him into the ranks of the army of God. As a result, the wolf cub had been chased down for several days by the clan of that young master. That explained a lot about the current situation, but Yi Shiwen was curious to know what happened to Jian Wuchen. "Where is Jian Wuchen?" Yi Shiwen asked, as he had been unable to hear any news about him. "A few days ago, that guy was stranded in a valley and actually found a giant ancient heritage related to sword arts. So he decided to stay and assimilate it," the wolf cub replied. Yi Shiwen nodded. Obtaining a sword art heritage was indeed a great fortune for a sword master like Jian Wuchen. The Mo siblings heard this and appeared a little envious. Compared to Yi Shiwen, they were more aware of the importance of this kind of fortuitous adventure and heritage. Experts had been known to have grown profoundly powerful after finding such heritage. This road was riddled with elites from various regions, and at their current levels, the siblings' existence was nothing more than an ant's in this competitive environment. Like an ant that was on the road to Tianmu, ready to be crushed by any other genius of the younger generation. In a place where geniuses had gathered up like ants, only a few people could climb the ladder and shine above all. Everyone was aware of this brutal truth, but was still resolutely embarked on this road. In order to prove their worth, they needed to have an invincible state of mind, while constantly hoping to come across a great adventure on this road, a miracle to make them stronger than others. In reality, something like that was certainly not possible, and only a few lucky ones obtained such an opportunity to witness a fortuitous encounter that could change their destiny. Everyone wanted to be a top player, and any such opportunity was craved by all. This was the fundamental reason why so many experts were unceasingly coming to traverse this road. Like earlier, Hua Minghan obtained an extraordinary heritage on the Demon Island. Yi Shiwen never asked her what it was because it was presumably not an ordinary one. Yi Shiwen remained low-key for several days, also restrained the wolf cub from going out to stir up trouble everywhere. He began closed-door training and indulged in final preparations before the opening of the small world. Anyway, he already had a sword command in his possession, so he was not anxious. just waiting for the right time to make an appearance. But just because Yi Shiwen was relaxing, it did not mean that the entire Yangon city was peaceful as well. On the contrary, in order to compete for the 8 sword commands, the entire city was in chaos. On the second day of Yi Ziwen's closed-door practice, he heard the news that the 5th god had already gotten his hands on 3 sword commands. The members of the army of God were continually searching for sword commands under the leadership of the 5th god. Their overbearing reputation was like a declaration to all, and everyone was aware of their intentions of opening the small world to monopolize the treasure inside. Besides the 3 sword commands in the 5th god's possession, one with Yi Shiwen, the 5th sword command finally made an appearance, and it turned out to be in the possession of Yangon City Lord's hands. The City Lord personally moved into action and snatched the 5th sword command before the 5th god could get his hands on it. After losing the fight, the 5th god had to resentfully give up on it. After all, the army of God, although very strong, was only an organization consisting of young experts, with almost all of them below 50 years of age. There certainly were a lot of talented evildoers in the older generation, and the army of God couldn't risk provoking them. Then the news about the appearance of the 6th sword command soon spread. It soon fell into the hands of a super terrifying influence of the Ming Empire, the largest intelligence agency called Genie Guards. Their strength as well as influence was almost unimaginable and making it impossible for other experts to dare and snatch the sword command from them. This time, the operation was led by a super genius from the younger generation of Genie Guards. He was one of the top young masters of Ming Empire. With the emergence of Genie Young Master, the news about him spread all over the city, inciting several discussions about him and his past. It was found out that Genie Young Master had been specially trained by Genie Guards since childhood when they found out that he was exceptionally talented. He demonstrated extraordinary talent and had participated in bloody battles to contribute significantly to Genie Guard's glory. He had already defeated countless internal contemporaries and gradually reached the status of the best genius in the younger generation of Genie Guards. Genie Young Master's strength level really raised some eyebrows, not to mention being a native genius of the Ming Empire. Even the government of Yangon City was proud of him. Moreover, Genie Young Master had already gotten permission from the top brass of Genie Guards to participate in the conquest that was ongoing on the ancient route to Tianmu. Genie Young Master was extremely strong, and the day he joined the conquest, countless experts lost their lives. He became the reason behind the river of blood spilled from the bodies of elite warriors who tried to stand in his way, including the members of the army of God. However, no one dared to make irresponsible remarks because they knew about Genie Guard's invincible power as Ming Empire's largest intelligence agency. Messing with an organization of spies and assassins was never going to be good for anyone. The appearance of the 6th Golden Sword Command had already spilled a river of blood, so the whereabouts of the 7th Sword Command made them clamor, causing numerous casualties of strong experts at the hands of a black-robed mysterious expert. Genie Young Master and several other experts engaged in a competition over the 7th Sword Command. However, Genie Young Master played his trump card and directly began a breakthrough from half-step legendary realm to half-step legendary first stage on the site, thereby invoking the heavenly tribulation on site. The other experts were scared of entering the field of heavenly tribulation to snatch the sword command, with several trying and dying in the process. The might of heavenly tribulation was infamous, and the deaths of several geniuses scared off the others from trying. At this time, the black-robed mysterious expert strolled through the heavenly tribulation and snatched away the sword command while Genie Young Master was busy having a breakthrough. The unexpected outcome caused uproar among experts. Moreover, the most important question was, who was this black-robed mysterious powerhouse who was so outrageously powerful? A lot of experts were shocked. After all, how could such a strong powerhouse not have a pre-existing fame in the world of martial arts? Stepping into the range of someone else's heavenly tribulation was a very serious and life-threatening stunt, and even true geniuses wouldn't dare to pull off such a stunt. While everyone was still discussing the incident about the 7th Sword Command and the black-robed expert, rumors about the whereabouts of the 8th Sword Command soon spread throughout the city, along with the news of it being in the grasp of a group called Qixing. Chapter 303, Competition for Sword Command. As the information about the location of the 8th Sword Command came to light, the 7 Star Lords organization immediately surfaced, and the Sword Command fell into the hands of the Destruction Army, working under this organization. These were tall, burly and intrepid young males with an ominous presence in this region. Rumors were that whenever they went all out, nobody could stop them. Along with the appearance of Destruction Army, the news about the 7 Star Lords also began to be slowly known. The 7 Star Lords organization was not an ordinary group on this road, but a tyrannical organization that was placed on a par with the Army of God, and well known to the experts who were traversing this road. It was said that 7 Star Lords organization was composed of 7 top young experts who were tyrannical enough to dominate the entire organization and command the Destruction Army. Suddenly, many people had started talking about the 7 Star Lords. After all, the tyranny of the Destruction Army was the real deal. There were a lot of small and large groups operating on various roads to TMU, and since each group or organization was supposed to have its own territory, this road had always been dominated by the Army of God, whereas the Destruction Army of 7 Star Lords organization was operating on some other road. However, now they arrived on this road to compete for the Sword Command, and this was bound to spark a fierce clash between the two forces. Everyone was waiting to see how the Army of God would react. It didn't take long for the news to reach the 5th God, and he immediately went into action to retrieve the Sword Command from the Destruction Army. Who would have known that the 5th God's declaration of war would have no effect on the Destruction Army? The 5th God was extremely furious and he directly clashed with the Destruction Army. However, he gave up later on and retreated. Although no one knew what happened to make him retreat, it was pretty obvious that he had been unable to subdue the Destruction Army and had to give up in the end. Now that 7 of the 8 sword commands had already appeared and were now in the possession of their respective owners, everyone was eagerly waiting for the appearance of the last one. Most experts didn't know that Yi Shiwen already had a sword command until the Army of God openly announced about it being in the possession of Yi Shiwen. Their original intention to do so was to incite experts into attacking Yi Shiwen, but no one knew that even though many people were envious of Yi Shiwen, no one was daring to attack Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had been staying low-key after his fight with the 5th God, the news about which had already spread throughout the Yangon city, and everyone knew about it. Now it was an established fact that Yi Shiwen was as powerful and fierce as the 5th God, so who would dare to mess with him? Now the news about the 8th sword also spread. Everyone started waiting for the small world to open. Sure enough, the 5th God took the position of a leader and summoned the other sword command owners. He also sent invitation tickets to those who wanted to go along with them into the small world. A large group of experts had gathered just outside the Yangon city, near a mountain range that was originally home to the ancient faction before its decline. And as the owner of a sword command, Yi Shiwen naturally received the invitation as well. Even if the Army of God didn't want Yi Shiwen to be a part of this ceremony, as long as he was in possession of a sword command, they had no choice but to summon him as well. Yi Shiwen, the Mo siblings and the wolf cub were flying toward the mountain range. There just were too many experts who had gathered to venture into the small world. Besides a majority of experts of the younger generation, there were a lot of tyrannical experts from the older generation in the crowd. Yi Shiwen and his team could certainly be ranked among the top of younger generation, but their overall strength was nothing in comparison when considering some of the experts of the older generation that had gathered there. It was hard to guess the sheer number of experts that were attracted to arrive here, each wanting to have a slice of the treasure. Yi Shiwen was in no hurry and slowly flying toward the mountain. His team was also surrounded by many people who knew his identity. All of them were staying away and not daring to come near Yi Shiwen. They had already heard a lot of insane rumors about him, killing a half-step legendary expert in one shot being one of them, not to mention about his fight with the 5th God. They had not seen him in action, but they could sense his tyrannical presence. At least, the experts of younger generation did not have the courage to challenge Yi Shiwen. Boom! At this time, a terrifying breath spread throughout the sky. A handsome young man in embroidered silk robe and waving a folding fan flew by like a beam of light, followed by 8 guys in similar embroidered robes. Each of them had profound cultivation level, Least being half-step legendary realm with 2 of them being at half-step legendary first stage. Some people recognize this unusual group. It's the young master of genie guards. He is finally here. It really is him. Since that day, the bloody-handed Jin young master's reputation has continued to resound throughout the Ming Empire as the cruel and merciless genius. If he was not cruel and merciless as they say, how else would have emerged victorious from the harsh training of the younger generation of genie guards? I would say he is among the top players in the younger generation of experts. Gee, it really is the team of genie young master. Just look at them, each and every one of them is in half-step legendary realm, and has unfathomable cultivation depth. If genie young master is embarking on this ancient road, does it mean that genie guards are planning to turn this road upside down? Now many young experts have stepped onto this road, cropping up many unknown yet invincible masters from all directions as well. Only the time will tell who will be victorious in the end. They were not discussing loudly as they didn't want to get on the wrong of genie guards, the largest intelligence agency of Ming Empire. These genie guard people seem like rampant individuals. The wolf cub said with disdain. He didn't like rampant people because he couldn't get used to seeing other more rampant than him. Only he had the right to the most rampant and arrogant. No one must surpass him in this department. Compared to the army of God, they have been more low-key. Yi Shiwen said dismissively. As they flew out of the city, they saw hundreds of members of the army of God rushing toward the mountain range. As opposed to the show-off attitude of the army of God, only a handful of genie guards had arrived for the event. The so-called luxury of being low-key in big events. Having fewer experts in a team improves its efficiency. Although the army of God has a lot of members, most of them are useless baggage. Yi Shiwen said lightly. What's the point of having hundreds of losers when I can easily kill all of them? One simply couldn't blame Yi Shiwen for thinking this way. This was the kind of world where only the strong had the right to command respect. Yi Shiwen only needed to pay attention to formidable experts like the fifth god while his subordinates were nothing more than a bunch of losers who were wasting their time serving others. The Seven Star Lords organization was also a similar group like the Army of God, but with only 7 members. Yi Shiwen had not seen them but could make a guess that all 7 of them were elites, just like the 5 gods. The Mo siblings were secretly speechless. Yi Ziwen's statement had left them flabbergasted. After all, only a top player like Yi Shiwen could talk like that. They themselves stood in the same league as the losers Yi Shiwen was looking down on. With respect to him, the ordinary members of the Army of God were simply not worth paying attention to. However, in reality, it was a terrifying organization with each and every one of its members being extraordinary young elites. After Genie Young Master's team, another group of experts appeared in the sky. This group was being led by an old expert who had an unfathomable cultivation depth. Some sharp-eyed people immediately recognized that it was a team of experts who represented the government office of Yangon City. Look, this is the team representing Yangon City's government office. They are called the Protectors of Yangon City, and defend the government office. It is said that the previous generation's city lord once rescued the life of this old man, and he has been defending the government office ever since. He has unfathomable strength and has saved Yangon City several times. He has basically become the patron god of Yangon City. Yes, no one knows where he came from, but some people say that he is from Tianmu while some say that he is from some unknown sect. In short, he is very mystical and nobody really knows his past. Yi Shiwen and the others soon approached the mountain range, and further went toward the large gathering of experts. Oi, are you Yi Shiwen? Surrender your sword command or it would be difficult for you to escape death. An aggressive voice sounded as a terrifying force swept across. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.